Russia was the Union of Soviet Social Republics. And they'd say, oh, but aren't you so glad that you're in America? I said, well, I know a lot of Russian filmmakers, and they have a lot more freedom than I have. All they have to do is be careful about criticizing the government.
Good evening, everyone. I'm your host, Jason Miles, and welcome to another episode of Pop Life. A little departure. Usually we do this on Wednesdays, but it's my goddamn channel, and I can do it whenever I want to. And I want to do it on a Tuesday, because why not? But if you are a returning listener, subscriber, thank you. So glad you're here. I feel like the TIR listeners and subscribers are going to have fun with this episode as we get to talk about, you know, some of you guys' favorite things. Horror films, 40 years ago, capitalist overproduction. It'll be a very good time. If you are new to this channel, welcome. So glad to have you here. If you do enjoy what you see here, please make sure you hit like and possibly even subscribe on your way out. It's a passive gesture that goes a very long way. Before we even get started, I do want to remind people that I hope you have June 8th set aside on your calendar, as we will be live in DC. Beyond the Black Jacobins, CLR James and the Struggle for Socialism is America, with Adolph Reed, Pascal Robert, Daniel Tutt, Derek Varn, and me. Also, wherever you are watching or listening to the show, there should be a link in the description to tickets. If not, I will put one in the chat. Don't you worry. But we have added a VIP meet and greet after party. So that'll be a lot of fun. So if you've already purchased your ticket, there should be a link now for the VIP meet and greet after party. So I am excited about that. Now, was 1984 the best year of horror movies? I don't know. If you know, on this Pop Life series we've been doing, my good friend and fellow musician Conan Neutron and I have been doing these shows based on music. Is such and such year the greatest year of music? And that comes from an article. It actually starts off from a friend of mine whose son was about 18 years old. And his son was looking up the year 1993 and telling his father how much great music came out in 93. And he told his dad that he felt 1993 was the greatest year of music ever because of all these albums that came out. Wu-Tang came out, and this album came out. And so it caused me to look up, has anybody ever written about what's the greatest year of music? And I found this article. I can't remember what publication it was in. Maybe Spin or something like that. And it had about 15 years that they marked as the greatest years of music. And Conan Neutron and I are going down that. So this Saturday, we'll be doing our first foray into the 60s, which I was very nervous about because people get so particular about the 60s. And a lot of that music I'm not the biggest fan of. But 1967 we're talking about. But I also, in looking up, we did the year 1984. We did 2 episodes for 1984. I couldn't be there for the main episode, and I did one on just punk and metal. And in doing that, I found that there was a lot of horror movies that came out in 1984. And there's just a lot of good movies in 84 in general. You know, Ghostbusters, Karate Kid. 84, big year. But looking back to 1984 in the world of horror, on the surface, there are some amazing films that become franchises that are still relevant 40 years later. The Nightmare on Elm Street franchise was launched in 84, as well as Gremlins, Ghostbusters, Terminator, The Toxic Avenger, Children of the Corn. Oh, that's a franchise. Maybe not one people enjoy, but it's a franchise. And I'll really mix it up and say Red Dawn. Can't wait to see what the guys have to say about that, because I think Red Dawn's a horror movie. The advent of the home video cassette recorder allowed people for the first time to be able to watch movies of their own choosing at home. Hollywood's fear of losing box office ticket money caused them to make the price of a video cassette extremely expensive. Regardless of the price, the appetite for watching videos at home was insatiable, so to fill that need, a video rental market blossomed. With the major studios sitting this one out early on, independent filmmakers began to fill the public's appetite for home videos with low-budget horror films. Historically, horror is cheap to make, and after the success of films like Halloween and Friday the 13th, horror had a formula to follow for financial success. You could make a film with all the popular tropes. The success of Halloween and the like in the 70s showed that you didn't need to big name bankable stars, so hire some affordable and hungry unnamed actors, and you could bypass attempting to show the film in the theaters and release your film straight to video. With the price of video cassettes between $39 and $99 and thousands of video rental stores looking for movies to fill shelves, these independent studios were able to line their pockets during this home video boom. But many of the movies made weren't that good. An oversaturation of the slasher genre in theaters and the massive backlash of Silent Night, Deadly Night, where suburban mothers protested the movie's poster showing Santa going down the chimney with an axe, signaled to the major studios and the indies alike that the slasher genre had gone too far. However, 1984 also witnessed a revitalization within the genre with films like A Nightmare on Elm Street that introduced innovative elements that breathed a new life into the slasher formula. Science fiction and horror films, from the independent straight-to-video producers to small studios showing in theaters, got a boost with the psychological terror of Nightmare on Elm Street. This would mark a new era for the slasher genre. 1984 marks a curious time of a duality of decline and rebirth. 1984 highlights a transformative period in horror, reflecting the genre's capacity for reinvention and its enduring appeal. So, much like Marty McFly's quest to save his family from erasure, tonight with this A-team of movie fanatics, we will go back to the past and attempt to save the glory of 80s schlock cinema. Please welcome the panel I'll be talking with tonight, Professor Dr. Ben Burgess and the Doctor of Love, J.G. Michael.
I like that you're wearing a Iron Maiden shirt. That's Power Slave also came out in 1984.
That it did. And if you have the playlist that we make for all of these music shows, then you know that songs from Power Slave are on that playlist. I'm also making a playlist for 1967. A lot of psychedelic music that is quite self-indulgent. Comes out in 1967. My fucking God. I started the show off with my opening monologue where I call Red Dawn a horror film. For a 7-year-old me, there was nothing more frightening than a world war fought right in front of me. Do you guys consider this late Cold War film horror? I'll start off with you, JG.
I mean, I consider RoboCop horror in some ways, so I have to consider Red Dawn horror.
Okay. Interesting.
Think about the gore in movies like RoboCop. I mean, Red Dawn, yeah.
You call it a horror film? Ben?
Yeah, because the Russians lose.
Did not see that one coming. you would have cheered it on when they rappel down from the planes, and the teacher's like, "Hey, how you doing?" And you've just been like, "Oh shit, fuck yeah, no school tomorrow."
Yeah, omelets, eggs. What do you want? No, I don't. I guess outside of the, the horrifying victory of American imperialism at the end, otherwise, yeah, I would not, I guess, consider Red Dawn to be a horror film exactly. Although I think RoboCop is actually like a pretty solid. I mean, I know it's not 1984, but I think there's like a, since it was mentioned, I think there's like a solid case there. That's like a genuinely, creepy premise, right? Like the thing at the beginning of like RoboCop 2, where it's like, oh, you got to stop visiting your family. You're not that person anymore. That's some human being who used to exist. That's not you. It's like, oh, okay, that's actually genuinely like unsettling, and that feels horror movie, and that almost in a sort of weird body horror way.
Terminator, to me, I believe it is a horror movie. The first one.
Anyone who says Terminator is not a slasher movie is wrong. Slasher movie.
It's a straight up slasher movie. It scared the bejesus out of me when my father rented it. I did not see the theater. I saw it on home video, and Arnold Schwarzenegger was a villain to me because Conan used to scare me a little bit too as a little kid. Because there was some bloody films back in the day.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of funny. You're not supposed to treat it that way, but the most memorable monologue in Conan is totally a villain monologue. It's the crush your enemies, see them driven before you, hear the weeping lamentations of their women. Like, how is that not something that a villain would say?
And you're watching it like 8 years old. You're like, I don't do you would talk like that on the playground.
That sounds bad, but yeah. I think Terminator. I think Terminator is a lot of things. It's a really good movie, but in some ways it kind of feels like a Western to me. But like, yeah, there's definitely an element of, like it certainly has the structure of a slasher movie, that you have somebody who's, shows up, sort of this implacable figure like Jason or Michael Myers, talks as little as possible, and goes through killing a bunch of women until the final girl and like one guy, fight him off, but then he dies too, and only she lives at the end. I mean, that sounds like you just described a slasher movie.
I mean, when you say like a Western,
Yeah.
I believe it was Toby Hooper, I could be wrong, that called horror movies the modern Western.
Mm-hmm.
JG, you're the resident TIR movie guy. Would you agree with that analogy?
I don't know. I'd have to think about it, to be honest. I could see that in that it's like, Westerns are one of the most popular genres, and, you could produce them on the cheap back in the day. And I think that's the same with, horror movies. I think horror gave a lot of directors their first opportunity to break in the same way that, I think that was true of Westerns as well. So I can definitely see similarities. And it's funny because you were talking about movies that could be considered Westerns. And I was thinking of John Carpenter's Escape from New York, which also
It's a Western.
it's a Western, but it also has like horror elements to it with the, the crazies and all that stuff in it. So it's interesting. A lot of those 80s movies, while we're doing horror movies, they have elements of horror in them,
while we're doing Carpenter, Assault on Precinct 13, it has like some Western feel to it. You're defending this like little outpost, with like your hardy little band of gunfighters. I'm just kind of trying to think about it on the fly. If there's other Carpenter, is there like a?
Well, I believe the whole statement was the way the storytelling has, this person's journey. I think a lot of these people that are making these films grew up with low budget Westerns and horror films. And I think you see it in the filmmaking of people like John Carpenter. This is in 1984. I think it's 86, but a movie like The Hitcher to me is a Western. Even the setting in kind of nowhere America, right? The Badlands, if you will, of like looks like California, Arizona, like the West. I forget where the Hitcher is supposed to be, where they're supposed to be driving, but as someone that's driven through the western region of the United States a lot, it does have that feeling of running into a bad hombre in one of those small towns. And the Western is pretty
Mm.
much dead. I mean, they try to revive it with Silverado, which was that 84 or 85 that Silverado comes out. But it's really gone in the 80s. And I think horror takes its place mainly because there's a home video market that's really starting to boom. And the one thing you can make for it that'll work is horror movies. You can try to make a low budget romance, but who the fuck really wants to see it?
A few years later than 1984, but Near Dark
Oof.
is
Yes.
definitely
Near Dark is definitely a Western.
Yeah.
Yes.
I can see what Toby Hooper means by a lot of horror movies are Westerns. I was thinking about, when he does, I think it's in 86, he does Texas Chainsaw Massacre Part 2, which is definitely has a Western vibe to it, right down to Dennis Hopper is like the lawman that has to take down the outlaw cannibal family. Even the original Halloween has that sort of like Dr. Loomis is sort of like the lawman that has to take down the gunman, the bad outlaw, who in this case is the stalker killer. Yeah,
He's been
Michael Myers.
Yeah, he's been trailing him through the desert, and now he's like caught up to him. Yeah, I can see that.
In your guys' opinion, what led to the downfall of the slasher by 1984? I want people to remember that Friday the 13th Part 5 that comes out in 84 is the final chapter because that was to mark an end of the Jason franchise. So,
I'll let Ben go first.
Well, let me.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, let me just say, like, I mean, it feels a little strange to say that it declined, fallen by 1984 because 1984 is where my candidate for the best one was made, right? Nightmare on Elm Street. So, and it is also maybe worth mentioning that, like, yeah, they called it the final chapter, but there were like 6.
Oh, well,
that.
Look, if you, I remember the back in my day, the hype around Silent Night, Deadly Night, which has the ad that was in the newspapers of the Santa Claus going down the chimney with the axe, and people mad that they were like kind of ruining Christmas for children. And I don't know how many children were really going to go watch this movie that was never going to have a long theater run. Like, another thing that video did was you didn't need to have long theater runs for these films. So if you were to go look them up on Internet Movie Database, you might see a lot of these films didn't make a lot of money at the box office because they really weren't designed to make that much money at the box office. They were going to make money in the home video rental market. I don't think any of the sequels to Silent Night, Deadly Night ever saw theatrical releases, and they ended up making like 4 or 5 of those movies. JG, do you know how many of the Silent Night, Deadly Nights they made? I know they made at least 3.
They made 5, and then since then there's been a reboot of sorts.
Gross.
Yeah, fair. I also want to say, Chapter Black asked in the chat, is Ghostbusters a Western? And even I'm not shameless enough to like fully go for it, balls out, say that it was a Western, but there are points of similarity there. I mean, you have your gunfighters in this analogy who are like kind of disreputable characters. The establishment in the town doesn't like them, but they end up having to commission them at the end to take down the bad guy. So that's very Westerny.
Do you call Ghostbusters a horror movie? Because I got scared in the beginning of it when they're in the library.
I mean, I would. I think it's a horror comedy.
I think what people call it now, they're trying to like brand those type of movies as cozy horror. Have you guys heard of that?
I haven't heard that.
No.
Yeah, I don't even want to get into it. It's a stupid branding.
Well, that's
Okay.
Like stuff like the Wednesday TV series, or now people say Ghostbusters or the Addams Family movies are like cozy horror. Like light horror for people that don't like the hard stuff. And I'm like, oh, what does that even mean? It's just a branding exercise.
I mean, look, I love the hard stuff, and I mean, Ghostbusters is like one of my favorite movies.
No, it definitely. I think it's, if not horror, it's horror adjacent. I think it's a horror comedy, definitely.
I want to go down a list of some of the movies that came out in 1984 because I'm shocked at how many came out in 1984. Chud. Ben, have you seen Chud?
I have actually seen Chud. Yeah.
What did you think of Chud?
What did I think of Chud?
Cannibal.
I think it delivered what the title promised.
Cannibal human.
Cannibalistic humanoid underground
Yes.
dwellers, I believe.
But then at the end, you find out that's not what it means. It means contamination, hazardous.
Oh,
What
I don't
is
even
it?
remember.
JG, what is it? I know you know.
Oh, I don't even remember what. I just remember the cannibalistic humanoid underground dwellers. But I know what you're talking about. They find out the real meaning. Yeah,
because the whole.
I
thing is
love
like a
that
cover.
movie, by the way. It's been so long since I've seen it, but
it's on
yeah,
YouTube.
you just have
by
that
the
like
way.
weird looking creature popping up out of the sewer and stuff. Daniel Stern shows up. John Goodman has a cameo. There's a lot of Before You Were Famous, appearances in it.
Yes.
I mean, I don't remember Chud well enough to love it, but I do have distinct memories of hanging out at my friend's cabin and, getting drunk and watching it. And I feel like I enjoyed it at the time.
He's thinking Children of the Corn, which JG.
Crap. I've never finished Children of the Corn. I've never finished it. It's crap. It's boring. It should be put on so I can fall asleep. One day I'm going to try to watch it again and maybe I'll change my mind, but
So this is a banner moment in the stream because I'm 100% sure the only movie that I have seen all the way through that JG has.
Children of the Corn.
It's Children of the Corn, right? Because there's no way, right? He's seen everything. So this is kind of cheating. It's just because he chose not to finish it, but not like he never got around to it. But yeah, I've seen it. It's not a great movie.
You're not a fan.
I mean, I don't think I maybe hate it as much as JG does, but it's not good. I mean, I honestly, I don't know. I always thought they did the thing, the He Who Moves Between the Rows, where there's and it always just looked like a really big gopher to me, the way that the dirt was moving around. I don't know. I mean, it was kind of funny watching it because certainly years before I finally got around to watching it, I watched the South Park parody of it, where the kids realize that they want to go to a concert and their parents won't let them, and then Cartman teaches them they can make all the grown-ups go away if they say the magic M word, molested. So that creates the city of South Park has only children in it, and this couple drives through and they do a lot of the beats from Children of the Corn. And then the big twist at the end is that it's only been 3 days. That's how long it took to for them to descend to that level.
Children of the Corn is one of those movies that I remember watching one night. It came on cable. So many of the way I consumed these movies was through cable. And I talk a lot about home video in the intro, but cable is a rising phenomenon at the same time too. I know Bessner doesn't talk about it in his piece, but Vulture magazine did a good piece a year ago about how the end of cable kind of marked the end of certain aspects of Hollywood, because that was the goose with the golden egg with cable for years, for decades. And a lot of these low budget movies, definitely fed cable's 24-hour programming schedule that people like me that don't know how to go to sleep definitely consumed throughout my childhood. And I remember watching it, and the opening scene scared the shit out of me with that creepy looking fucking kid. It was Malachi. And then it just kind of gets real dull.
That's the thing. Maybe I shouldn't have been so harsh when I said it's crap, but I've just never been able to get through it. I want to finish it one day, but I'm just it's a very dull movie.
It's a dull movie. And Stephen King stuff, he's printing money for Hollywood at a certain point, right? It starts with Carrie. Then you get The Shining, which might be one of the best horror suspense thriller movies of all time.
No question to my mind. I also think, I know this is super heretical, but I actually think that the Kubrick's movie is better than King's book, and I say that as somebody who actually really likes Stephen King. But like, that's like a pretty good Stephen King book, and that's like a top 50
Yes.
kind
Did
of
you ever
movie.
see the mini series that Mick Garris did of The Shining?
No.
I
See,
have,
and that's
I
why,
just never
because
like.
no one remembers that because it wasn't as good as the Jack Nicholson Kubrick movie.
Yeah, I mean, like the whole premise that's like, oh, see, they got to do a mini series where they did all the shit from the book that didn't make it into this amazing movie. It's like it just like the premise kind of made me sad, so like I never felt particularly motivated to
I
track
mean,
it down
it
and
gets
watch
some
it.
points for me because I have a crush on Rebecca De Mornay, but
Do you guys feel
Fair enough.
that before PG-13 that some of these movies were better? Because PG-13 comes to be in 84. Because of
I have a whole different take on this 84 thing than most people do.
go for it. Preach.
So I get really confused when people say like, oh, it's the end of the golden age of the slasher. Or not confused, but I'm like, I think there's a lot. Most of my favorite slasher movies and horror movies come out after 84.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, the two Sleepaway Camp sequels with Pamela Springsteen, which are more horror comedies.
Yeah.
Phenomena, the Argento movie, comes out in January of 85.
Yeah.
Night of the Creeps, which is just a really great. It has elements of a slasher in it, but it's sort of like a throwback to the 50s style sci-fi horror. Child's Play came out in 88.
Yeah.
And also some of my favorite like Poverty Row horror movie productions come out after 84. So stuff like Hollywood Chainsaw Hookers and Sorority Babes and the Slimeball Bolorama. That's the weird stuff.
Yeah.
But I mean, even stuff that's more well known to horror fans, like the House movies come out after 84. I think there's a Maniac Cop is another one that I'm a real big fan of. I think a lot of good stuff came out after 84. So I think people overplay the like death of horror movies thing and the death of the slasher movie, because I think there's a lot of really good ones that came out after 84. Although I do think there's a lag period. 84, it seems like there's a few really great ones that come out, but it does feel like, it's going more direct to video and whatnot.
But is 84 the year where Hollywood figures out how to do horror well?
I mean, maybe. And by the way, JG mentioned Child's Play. I will say the first, it definitely became something else, and I'm not bashing that either. But the first Child's Play movie I rewatched not that long ago, and it holds up really well. Like it's such a nicely put together movie. I love the way that there's some ambiguity about, other than the voodoo curse at the beginning, if you ignore that, there's like nicely played ambiguity where it like just barely could be all in her mind, like up until pretty late in the movie. So a lot of points for Child's Play, the original. But yeah, I mean, I think that again, I just want to go back to like, to my mind, I mean, that first Nightmare on Elm Street movie is a perfect horror movie. I mean, like I like that would be like my number one, and that comes out in 1984, right? It's like a pitch perfect slasher movie that's also this like weird dreamy fantasy movie, and it's a perfect combination of those things. So I mean, that's got to be some evidence that that's actually when they were figuring out how to do this
I think
really
there's
well.
A lot of truth to that. I mean, I don't know if I think Phantasm came out after Phantasm 2 came out after 84. That's when Universal picked it up because they're like, oh, we need more horror franchises. The Halloween movies get resurrected in 88. They bring back Michael Myers after everyone thought that whole saga was over. There's so many of the Elm Street sequels come out and the Jason movies. So to me, I really do think people overplay the downfall of the slasher movie in a lot of ways. I mean, I think the slasher movies are different after 84, though. I think they're a little bit crazier and a little bit weirder a lot of times, often leaning into comedy, like with the Sleepaway Camp sequels, or movies like Cheerleader Camp, Evil Dead 2, if you're looking for a bigger, more well-known one.
Oh my God, yeah.
Night of the Demons is another one.
Night of the Demons.
Yeah.
Count
but
Dingleberry,
all of those sort of have comedic elements or kind of humorous elements. Yeah.
Well, Also, Jason mentioned earlier that JG, you just mentioned the Jason movies, and Jason mentioned earlier that Final Chapter comes out in 1984. But like, also, I mean, look, I've actually just gone through rewatching most of these. I still need to rewatch Jason X, but like almost all the others. And I mean, okay, Friday the 13th, the original movie, that's a good movie, but like 2 through 4 are pretty bad. Final Chapter is not a particularly good movie.
Sacrilege.
Like to my mind, yeah. To my mind, that franchise actually gets good in 1986 when Jason Lives comes out.
I like the Corey Feldman. I like the Corey Feldman one. That was the first one I saw.
That's like the fan favorite for Friday fans. But I always upset the Friday fans because I'm like, I always loved Part 5 because it's literally the sleaziest movie in the entire series.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing about
literally
Part 5
directed by a porno
is...
director. Who I met, Danny Stein.
Fair enough. Yeah, I mean, Part 5 is the one that there's the camp location mental health facility for teens, right? That's Part 5. I'm thinking about the right movie here. Yeah, which is funny because it actually makes me wonder if that's an influence on Dream Warrior, that's a Dream Warriors that it's set in. It has that setting, but if so, it's the cinematic equivalent of one of those like ultra forgettable 60s songs that later the people who made it got $10 million by suing Led Zeppelin for ripping it off, but like it's a weird movie. It doesn't have Jason in it, which is which is a fascinating choice. I'm also pretty sure, like, look, I don't have any professional experience here. I'm just speculating, but I would imagine that real mental institutions don't typically allow their patients to have access to Axis.
Even in the woods.
Even in the woods, I would be very surprised.
Those if I don't know if it's a direct bite from the Friday the 13th movies, because we have to kind of go back in the Wayback Machine and remember that there is a phenomenon going on with young people when it comes to putting them in facilities for things like listening to heavy metal, devil worship, and also a rise in drug facilities for youth. All this is happening around the same time. So I could see some of these guys not necessarily biting the idea. I wouldn't be surprised if they bit the idea at all. But I could also see it just being something that's probably very common in their lives, as some of these directors did have kids around the same age.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, I will say though, like really, like 2 through 4, like each of those, like they're weird, like they're weirdly obsessed with continuity, even though the continuity makes no sense. None whatsoever. But like all 3 of those movies, 2, 3, and 4, start out with super long extended flashbacks to the earlier movies, which is like to the point you're watching this.
Just especially with the
these are not long movies.
Add that runtime. We watched a movie last night called Disconnected from '84. It was a low budget '84 horror movie, definitely straight to video, and you can tell they were just padding runtime with these long shots of nothing.
So it's like, yeah, they're so obsessed with like continuity that they all have like 10 minutes of the earlier movies at the beginning of the 85-minute runtime. But then like, yeah, if you think about that continuity for like 2 seconds, like, wait, what? Right? So Jason in the first movie is either, he's dead. Like if he's, maybe there's some suggestion that he's alive in some weird supernatural way in like the last 30 seconds, but like that also really feels like a dream sequence. But either way, right, at best, if he's alive in some strange supernatural way, he's a child at the end of it. And then the next one, it's like a year later, and he's, which they establish like very clearly at the beginning that not very much time has passed, and he's a full-grown man, but there's also nothing supernatural about him. He's just like a wild man, you know, like killer in the woods, and he's like really not even that strong when it comes up in the movie. And so it's like, yeah, none of this continuity makes the least little bit of sense, but they're fixated on it, and they haven't really figured out the character yet. I mean, like it really feels to me like number 6, 1986, Jason Lives, that's where they actually have something that feels like the iconic Jason to me. I mean, you know, he doesn't you know, I mean, he doesn't even get the mask until the end of 3, I want to say. And they have and like, you know, it's like number 6 is like he's actually this like clearly implacable, unkillable, supernatural monster. And it's like, I don't know, maybe it's just a matter of taste, but it's like that's the Jason I want to
totally
see,
get
and
that,
that's
because
after
6 is like it's a very weird entry, because it's the it's kind of like the gothic entry, you know, like no, I'm not kidding. Tom McLaughlin, when he made Jason Lives, he deliberately made the opening scene in the cemetery, he wanted it to look like one of the old Universal monster movies, you know, and it has a very different feel than the movies prior to it, you know. I think I like 4 just because I think Joseph Zito directed it with a certain comic book style, and it's a very mean-spirited movie, and I like mean-spirited horror movies. But yeah, 6 is a really interesting one. Bit of trivia here: Tom McLaughlin, who directed Jason Lives, pitched a sequel for it, and the sequel was going to be, believe it or not, he pitched, why don't we do an Abbott and Costello type movie, like, you know, Abbott and Costello Meet the Monsters. Who do you think he wanted to be the Abbott and Costello duo? Cheech and Chong.
No idea who.
Chong and Jason. That was his pitch, and I'm so angry
That would have been
happened.
Hey, you can greenlight that.
I would have watched the shit out of
You
Cheech
know,
and
that would
Chong
have been a
and
perfect
Jason.
setup. It's perfect.
You can greenlight Jay and Silent Bob Meet Jason. You could greenlight that all day long and twice on Sunday.
Oh my
dude,
God,
Kevin
that's so
Smith,
good.
if he hears that right now, he's coming all over himself.
It is really weird though, now that you got my gears turning about all of this, with regards to like the year 84. It is interesting. Like, I'm thinking of horror movies that are pre-84, the slasher movies from pre-84. So stuff like Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker,
Ooh, the Prowler.
The Prowler. There was another one that just, like,
I feel like Butcher,
oh,
Baker.
Eyes of the Stranger with Jamie Lee's sister.
Which one is Eyes of the Stranger?
The one from The Hitcher.
Oh, Ben, you haven't seen that, have you, Ben?
Have you seen Eyes of a Stranger? It's about
No.
It's about like I believe it's a deaf or a mute girl is like being stalked by this killer. Visiting Hours is another one from 82 with Michael Ironside, which is like really weird because it's basically about a guy who like listens to a Rush Limbaugh type radio host that basically like turns this guy into a killer because he's obsessed with like hhis hatred of women.
Okay. So I kind of like that. So it's like Falling Down as a slasher movie.
Yeah. Well, but what's weird is all those movies I just named, they're very mean-spirited, gritty. They're kind of edgelord horror in a way. They're very edgy and like very grim. You know, Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker is like way ahead of its time in dealing with stuff like homophobia. The Prowler is extremely mean-spirited. Whereas I think a lot of the horror movies after 84, they're more Hollywood in a weird way, if that makes sense. What do you think, Jason?
Yeah, I feel like there's kind of these weird pros and cons with all of this production that you get in the 80s. By the time these small companies like Avco and Troma start actually making money and they can actually produce decent films, you can go a lot of different ways with it. And Butcher, Baker, Nightmare Maker, I think it changes its title, and I forget what they changed that title to.
Night Warning.
Night Warning. There you go.
I'm such a nerd.
I'm glad you remember that, because you know both titles don't really set you up for what you're going to see, because that's a disturbing film. I watched that because it kept getting recommended to me, and I sat and watched it and I was like, what the this is fucked up. And if you guys haven't seen it, I believe it's on Amazon on Shudder. Definitely check it out. And it's on there under Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker, or can't. What is it again? JG, the title
What's
of
that?
it? Butcher Baker
I think
Nightmare Maker.
Night Warning is the other title.
Yeah, but what's the main title we know?
Butcher Baker Nightmare Maker.
Nightmare Maker. Okay, yeah. I'm remembering the also the nursery rhyme. In 84, if you start looking at all the movies that come out in 84, there is so many kind of like big Hollywood movies, and some of the more straight to video stuff is so straight to video. Like movies like Disconnected and Black Devil Doll from Hell, like stuff that if you don't have a VHS player, you are not watching these today unless some good Samaritan has uploaded them onto YouTube, which makes me sad because it's kind of the end of a certain era of this filmmaking. And I don't know, Ben, were you the kind of person that if you saw a movie or rented a movie and it was shot on video, did you automatically like get rid of it, or would you watch it anyway?
No, I'd watch it.
I know JG will watch shit shot on video.
I love the shot on video look. I don't know what it is. There's just something like it feels like I'm watching something from a different universe. I don't know.
It does feel that way.
And also, I just respect anyone that can make a movie on a budget of like $5 and a ham sandwich. So
that shit was like that, but it's really funny when you start reading numbers of how, like, again, that movie Disconnected, which is available on YouTube if people want to watch it. It's a different type of slasher. It's a little more cerebral. And I think by the time you get to 84, like 84 is a big year for music as well, too, because it's in fashion, and it's a time where this is what it is, right? The 80s. This is what the 80s is. It's loud colors. It's shoulder pads. It's, cocaine in the bathroom. It's synthesizers.
You know what I've completely forgotten, even though we talked about it so recently. What came out in 1984 is Night of the Comet.
Yes, I was going to bring that up.
I'm embarrassed to say this. I haven't seen Night of the Comet.
You should. It's very, very good.
No, you should be embarrassed, JG.
I am.
Because Night of the Comet's on YouTube.
That's true.
I have a copy of it. I have a DVD of it somewhere. I've never gotten around to it for some reason.
I really love Night of the Comet. I love it.
Ridiculously fun movie, and it's kind of perfectly put together for what it is.
Yeah, it moves real well. I don't know, that's one of those movies that the studio did right, as far as I'm concerned, when we talk about this time. And on a nothing budget. Nothing budget, yeah. I think that the slasher, JG, by the time we get to 84, the way that we know it, either the call from the house and the guy stalking the babysitter in the house, or kids in the woods, we had just seen it too many times. Like, to me, Sleepaway Camp is one of those, well, this is the bridge too far. What else are we going to do? Curling iron up the ass? Oh, no, the killer's got a penis. Like, that's... It was like, once you hit Sleepaway Camp, what else can you do? And we all know that the reason why holiday horror films are big, because you don't have a marketing budget. So Mother's Day, Christmas Evil, Silent Night, Deadly Night, Halloween.
Also, you forgot the one that came out the same year as Silent Night, Deadly Night. Don't Open Till Christmas.
Oh.
The movie where instead of a killer Santa, it's a guy who kills anyone dressed as Santa.
Yeah, the British one. It's a little different, yeah.
Just as sleazy.
What year does Christmas Evil come out?
I want to say 1980, but it could be 79.
1980, you're right.
Okay.
I really liked Christmas Evil more than I liked Don't Open Till Christmas. I wanted to like Don't Open Till Christmas. Maybe it was the accents that were throwing me off. But I don't know if Ben remembers, we tried to watch Christmas Evil
Ugh.
and we started watching it. I think you went to sleep.
That sounds very plausible.
Because I think it's called You Better Watch Out. So we locked it up on Christmas Evil, and then when the opening title card comes in, it says You Better Watch Out.
Yeah. It's one of those movies that went through so many titles that doesn't even say the same thing in the opening frame as it does in the cover.
The thing, but it was actually a really interesting character study. It to me, it showed kind of what you can do on a decent budget with good actors that have bought in. And I think that's what makes some of these movies work, these lower budget films, when actors all buy in. And I think that works with Nightmare on Elm Street, because you have a really young cast that is all bought into whatever it is Wes Craven's talking about. Because when we talk about Wes Craven's catalog of films, it's all over the place, because he's doing a lot of weird made-for-TV stuff that's not that good. I don't know how you guys feel about Last House on the Left.
I like
I'm
Last House on the Left a lot.
All that kind of weird revenge horror shit for me is just kind of hard to watch after a while. You're like, you're gonna rape the shit out of this chick for a good 60 minutes, and then she gets 30 minutes of comeuppance. But was it worth it?
Sure.
Is it really revenge after the fucking terror that they inflicted on you for 2/3 of the film? And then I know JG likes the original Hills Have Eyes. I'm not the biggest original Hills Have Eyes fan.
No, I think it's fine, but yeah, I mean, as weird as it feels to say this about a remake of Wes Craven movie, since I love Craven so much, the 2006 one is so much better.
Why does everyone love that remake?
I like the way it looks.
I just don't understand. I mean, I like Laura Ortiz in that movie as the Janice Blythe's character. She's like the good cannibal mutant or whatever. In the remake. Yeah. I like her in that movie, but I will never forgive that movie for the lecture that it gives with remember the Big Brain mutant? He's literally called Big Brain. And he's like, "You created us." And I'm like, why do you have to tell me the point of the movie? I don't that's what I love about Craven's original. A lot of that stuff is implied. It's not spelled out for you. And I didn't like the way it shoved the message in the face. I will never forgive that movie for it. It's otherwise a great movie. But that third act really pissed me off for some reason.
Craven makes another movie in '84 that I believe was a TV movie called Invitation to Hell. Have you guys ever seen it?
I have not seen Invitation to Hell. I've been meaning to.
So
it's
back
one of those
in
made for TV movies.
Yeah, back in the Suncoast days, definitely after Craven died. I don't know who was owning these movies. They put out all this made for TV stuff where you could buy it. And I remember when I had a couple bucks, I went to Suncoast. I was like, Wes Craven, okay, I'm in. And I tried to like it. I wanted to like it, and I was like, oh, this is a not good film. I wanted to like Deadly Friend.
Deadly Friend is awesome. The basketball scene. Boom.
That's it.
Deadly Friend. I can tell you exactly why Deadly Friend is the way it is, because I think we'll never see it now because the footage is all lost. Mm-hmm. But it's two different movies wrapped into one movie. Mm-hmm. The original movie was, if you read the book, it's based on a young adult novel. Mm-hmm. And it's basically a modern day sort of Frankenstein romance story. Mm-hmm. Almost like an episode of Goosebumps is what it is.
It would have been an amazing episode.
Well, no, you see elements of that in the movie, but then the studio came in and said, we want more of a slasher movie. That's why you have the tacked on ending with spoilers, but with the coda to the film with the robot jumping out of the fucking flesh or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was tacked on to that movie, but beneath it all, I think there's a really good film. The studio interfered and demanded that it be more of a slasher movie because they hired Wes Craven. And I guess they were like, we didn't expect you to make a sort of a macabre romance is what he wanted it to be, is how he described it. And I really think they screwed the pooch on that movie.
Someone said, Sid Nanda says, Deadly Friend is a deadly friend zoning.
That's a good one.
But I love you. No, I don't really like you. You're a good friend.
Yeah.
You're bring you back from the dead. And then you'll love me. Oh, JG, you've been asked. Dizzle McFizzle wants to know, what is your opinion on the hoes? Are these hoes loyal?
I'm confused. What? I like the hose. I don't know.
JG is pro ho.
Yeah.
Dizzle, that's all you need to do. JG is pro ho. That's all that matters right now, Dizzle. And that is that's the best answer we've gotten so far, JG. I like the hose. Glad you do. A movie that came out in 84 that scared me, but I don't know if I'd go back to watch it. And I was tempted to go back to watch it for this, was Dreamscape. JG, I know you've seen Dreamscape.
I have not seen Dreamscape.
What
either.
the fuck? What were you doing in
out
1984 besides not being alive? Ben Burgess,
Sorry.
Man with No Cable. Did you see Dreamscape?
No, I was too busy being 4 years old.
You know what? I used to mix that movie up a lot when I would see it in video stores with Inner Space, the Joe Dante movie.
Easy to confuse it. In all fairness, it's easy to. I think Dennis Quaid is in both of them, isn't he?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it's easy to confuse it. Dreamscape was the movie about these people that could get into your dreams. Were they government workers? I forget. I just remember there's a part where the bad guy dude, who also plays the bad guy dude in Commando. He's also the bad guy dude in the Warriors. I believe he's the guy that actually clicks the bottles. You know, I don't know that guy's name. I feel like JG would know that guy's name. Someone says Inception meets Brazil. It's a pretty interesting film. Dennis Quaid's character kind of is figuring out his dream power. It's not a Freddy movie at all. It just happens to come out in 84, but they both deal with getting in people's dreams and controlling them through their dreams. And yeah, Sean Moon, the guy that goes Warriors come out and play. I can't think of that actor's name. Ninja 3, The Domination, maybe the greatest ninja film of all time, comes out in 1984 as well. JG and I did a whole show on ninjas. Ben Burgess,
Just hearing about it.
I don't think Ben has watched Ninja 3, The Domination.
I have not, despite having heard you talk about it for literally years now.
I saw that movie back when you could only get it from bootleg tape traders. So I'm so happy you finally got a Blu-ray. You should see it on Blu-ray. It looks amazing.
I mean, I could watch it anytime I wanted to, but
also the best V8 juice scene ever.
Ever. If you don't love ninja possessions, if you don't love a mixture between Flashdance, Poltergeist, and a ninja movie, we can't be friends.
All right, well, check back in a year and see if I've seen it.
Well, you know, maybe sooner than you think, Brother Burgess.
Well, maybe not. But
you know, we're gonna have your fucking, you know,
like Clockwork Orange.
Starting with Enter the Ninja. Has any of you ever seen actually Silent Night, Deadly Night?
I saw that and I got to see it on a theatrical re-release with Christmas Evil. I love Silent Night, Deadly Night.
No shit. That's been a great double feature. Have you ever seen that movie, Ben? Silent Night, Deadly Night?
I have. It's been a long time. It was on like one of those, like I watched it probably, I don't know, like early 2000s. I had like one of those DVDs that has like 6 movies on it.
Ooh.
Like I think it was on there. So
those are still my favorite.
Yeah, totally. Right. I was very into those. So I definitely watched it, but just the once, and it was a long time ago. I couldn't give you a lot of details now.
I'll never forget when I saw that movie. I saw it with my dad and a friend, and we walked out of it, and my dad said to me afterwards, that was a really interesting movie. It's kind of dealing with religious repression of sexuality.
Oh my
And I
God.
was like, that is in there actually quite a bit. I was like,
Papa Michael over there dropping fucking philosophical dimes, huh?
Yeah, I'm trying to
well,
think
it has a Carrie element to it. It tells us some of the same themes as Carrie, but
Yeah, I can see
it's not
that.
as serious about it, I would argue. But
yeah,
No.
in a different way. I was, as we were talking about, earlier, you were talking about the non-existence of God being decisively proven by the fact that we never got to see Cheech and Chong meet Jason, and that's, and what they made instead, number 7, New Blood, is essentially
it's
like,
Carrie meets Jason.
exactly, it's Carrie meets Jason. It's totally
And the
Carrie meets
producer of
Jason.
that movie thought it was going to be up for Academy Awards because she was insane. I'm not joking. They talk about it in the Friday the 13th Crystal Lake Memories documentary. Like, she
Awesome.
thought they were going to make a big budget, like high drama out of it. Like,
Can horror movies ever win awards as horror movies?
No, I mean, I think the only way that a horror movie can win an award is if people can tell
if they
them.
called it thriller, like Silence of the Lambs.
Yeah, they call it a thriller. They have it's like there has to be some other category that you can also place it in, so they feel less debased giving it the award.
I can see that.
I mean, I'm trying to think because I know, like, it didn't. Did Get Out get an award?
Yeah.
Yeah.
But did they nominate it as like best comedy or something? I'm not joking. Like,
I think it was written as a dark, very dark comedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it ended up getting so dark that I mean, like, don't get me wrong, there were definitely funny moments in Get Out, but I mean, that's moments.
Right.
But,
unfortunately, horror is like the looked down upon genre. Well, horror and comedies tend to get really looked down upon in a lot of ways.
And speaking of which, right, this is like 1984 has got to be like some kind of breakthrough year for horror comedies, right? Like, you think, we mentioned Ghostbusters earlier.
Gremlins,
1984. Get Out. The Night of the Comet definitely has elements of that, in it. So I mean, it seems
Toxic
like
Avenger.
Was that 84 or 85?
Yes, 84.
It was 84.
Nice. Yep. Yeah, right. So it's like I mean, like that's actually a pretty impressive string of horror comedy bangers there.
Someone asked the question, what constitutes a horror movie to you guys? Oh God.
That's a good question because it's a very hard.
We've been joined by Mean Gene Bajlan.
Oh shit. Shrouded in darkness like Kurtz in Apocalypse Now. I like it.
Exactly. That's what I'm going for, guys. 1984 is the best year. I just had to come on to say that.
Is the year you were born?
No, I was born in 1982. My wife was born. My wife.
I keep thinking you're younger than you are, Gene, so I'm sorry about that.
You keep thinking I'm older than I am, too.
You're every age for me. You're 41 and 69 and 38. Just deal with it. It's just what you are. Gene, do you have an opinion on horror movies from 1984, as you don't like horror movies?
I mean, name a horror movie from 1984. And I'll
Nightmare on Elm Street, Part 1.
It's okay.
Jesus Christ, Gene, don't go away.
What do you think, Zal? Do you think Nightmare on Elm Street is good?
Yeah.
Yeah, he thinks it's good.
There you go. And I know for a fact he hasn't seen it, so no one calls CPS on the Bajlan family. He hasn't seen it. He's just saying yes.
Zal's been upset because he hasn't quite worked out the difference between a YouTube video and when you're on Restream. So the other day he was sitting yelling at you, going like, Jason, and it's like, and then he's like, why isn't Jason talking to me? He's like, Jason. Nightmare on Elm Street's okay, man, but horror movies, you know what the scariest movie of all time is? Last King of Scotland.
That's a disturbing movie.
Yeah, well, if you've ever traveled around the world into, it's scary. It's like
A war zone?
Yeah,
No, I have not.
oh, I have. That movie was
She's
scary.
like, I haven't. I met Edie. I mean, because I am 68.
But I mean, like, but Nightmare on Elm Street. It's just a guy who comes into your dreams. Yeah,
Well,
Yeah, do you really want a guy coming in your dreams and messing with you?
I
and
mean,
then if you die in
that's-
your dream, you die for real. That's scary.
Mhm.
Also, I will point out, you're talking about war zones. The inspiration for the movie has to do with things that happen in one. That there was this series of unexplained deaths that of these like Cambodian refugee kids, and there was like and there's one of the kids. There's like a series of articles about this in the LA Times at the time. Had like it turned out like his like he was staying up for like days and days without sleep, and like his and like his parents were trying to give him sleeping pills, but he'd like throw them away without them seeing. And he had like a pot of coffee in his closet, so he could stay up. And then when he finally got to sleep, he died in his sleep. And that was the thing that inspired it. Of course, it's not Freddy Krueger. It's just the being traumatized by the killing fields. But there you go.
well, I hope you all talked about the best movie of 1984. JG, do you know what
Ghostbusters.
the best movie is of?
What is that, Gene?
It is David Lynch's Dune.
Jesus Christ.
Oh, Gene, you have to explain why. Hold on for a second, Zal. Daddy has to explain why David Lynch's Dune is one of the best movies that come out in 1984.
Because it has all the best meme materials in it. It's got guys drinking milk out of cats, right? They milk the cats in it. People have heart plugs. Patrick Stewart goes on a military offensive wielding a pug. Come on. Are you telling me unironically that's not? They have dancing. They have like Kyle MacLachlan at the end of the movie. He gets all the worms to do the boogie shuffle and it starts raining. So that's the best movie of 1984. I think Terminator 1 comes out in 1982.
A 2021, yes.
That was a good
I mean,
movie.
you guys haven't even mentioned the true best movie of 1984,
Oh, yeah,
Monster Dog, starring Alice Cooper.
I've
directed
never
by
seen that. I think you
Claudio
made that up.
Choltu Fragasso.
I think you
It's
made
not
that up.
actually
right
the
now.
best movie, but
I really believe you made that up. Is that really a movie that?
no,
comes
that's
out
a
in
real
84?
thing. Alice Cooper plays
I'm
a
looking it
rock
up right
star
now.
named Vince Raven, who goes back to his like old hometown and gets attacked by killer dogs.
Is 1984 that Stephen King is overdone because you have
Firestarter.
Children of the
Firestarter's
Corn.
amazing.
Bro, you have I just checked this. I wanted to double check to make sure I was correct, but I'm afraid all of you lose because 1984 is the year that the Ewoks, the Caravan of Courage, came out.
It's made.
I mean,
for
that's a
TV.
bit of a horror movie. I will admit.
All those post Jedi made for TV Star Wars things let me down so hard.
Goddamn, Red Dawn came out in 1984. You've been
We already talked about Red Dawn.
You don't. Okay, fair enough. Red Dawn
Yes,
came
Red
out.
Dawn.
What else came out? I think not Chariots of Fire.
Karate Kid comes out in 1984.
That's fair enough. I'm looking at the list of movies in 1984, and it's like there's some bangers out here. Half Slave, Half Free. What else do you have in there? Oh, it's pretty good. It seems like a good year.
But
But
do you
this
think people get tired of Stephen King by 1984 a little bit?
No, people aren't tired of Stephen King by 1984.
People aren't tired of Stephen King in 2024. What are you talking about?
Yeah, people love Stephen King. I mean,
So the man could like scrawl a couple of lines on a bar napkin tomorrow, and sooner or later somebody would turn it into a movie.
Yeah, what are you talking about? Being tired of King in '84? We don't get Silver Bullet until '85.
Oh, that's true. I like Silver Bullet. Gary Busey. It's great casting.
oh, is Beverly Hills Cop 1984?
Beverly Hills Cop is 1984. Look, the original title was 1984 the best year of film because so many again iconic movies that we think of the 80s come out in 1984. Like Beverly Hills Cop.
Caravan of Courage. Yeah, I mean that nothing Nothing says 1984 more than Ewoks, right?
I mean, Temple of Doom, Beverly Hills Cop, and Nightmare on Elm Street. Right there.
Is Temple of
can
Doom
say-
1984?
Yep.
Oh, I thought Temple of Doom was. I thought Last Crusade was Last Crusade was
It was later.
late 90s. When was the
1989, I believe.
when was the first one of those movies?
81 or 82?
81.
Yeah, so we
The-
just passed the 35th year anniversary of Last Crusades. That was 1989.
Temple of Doom was a good movie. It's the best Indiana Jones movie.
That's so fucking silly, Jude. That's not true.
It is the best one. It's got chilled monkey brains. Chilled monkey brains.
There's
and
people to this
the
day.
heroes. Who are the heroes at the end? The British, the sepoys. They come in and they shoot the natives. That's how I like it. You know.
Can we all admit that Repo Man is a really good, extremely underrated film?
Wait, I've got an idea. Film pitch. Temple of Doom, but from the Temple of Doom's perspective, where actually it's just like a vicious racist colonial attack on a peaceful people who just actually are just having their ceremony.
I mean, that sounds like a much better movie than Temple of Doom.
You didn't like Temple
What
of
the
Doom?
hell?
No,
What the
I
hell?
don't like Temple of Doom. It's not like
My
it's-
favorite Temple of Doom, like the best thing is like the guy who played Nehru in the Gandhi movie. He's like the dude in Temple of Doom, and I want to say he also plays Dalsim in the Street Fighter 2 movie
Mhm.
as well.
Okay, we
So-
haven't even mentioned the sixth highest grossing film of 1984.
Go
It's
for it,
immortal.
JG.
It has spawned countless sequels. Police Academy.
No shit.
Oh, Police Academy.
I was saying that jokingly, but yes, Police Academy. Came
Police
out.
Academy is. I remember going
Really?
to see Mission to Moscow in the cinema. That was a good movie.
You went to see Mission to
I mean,
Who's
Mission to Moscow is good, but Nightmare on Elm Street is just okay.
yeah, right,
I want-
exactly. Temple of Doom is good, and Nightmare on Elm Street is just okay. Come on, this
I'm
the,
sorry, what's you got against
that-
Temple
that-
of Doom? It's the best
well,
one.
look,
You
it's
just don't look.
it's.
you just
I
don't
mean,
like
what I will give you about Temple of Doom is that it's no longer the worst Indiana Jones movie. Like, I think that's the nicest thing you could say about
It
it.
was
that
never the
it's,
worst Indiana Jones movie.
it's like moved up to the point where there's at least one that's worse than that. I never watched the most recent one because the
all
one before that made me so sad.
all three Indiana Jones movies. I don't recognize the new ones, but all three of them are classics.
I'm going to
Okay.
name some movies.
I can even get on board with that, but like, come on, comparatively speaking, like,
I like
Ringer.
Temple of Doom. I like it. It's got that little Chinese kid in it. Come on,
Okay,
easy. It's
Okay,
like
so
so racist.
so you
It's
so you
racist.
just, so you just enjoy racism. That's fair enough, but like,
He's
they
a
have
part of
the,
TIR.
And this is we do race science on TIR.
That's all we do on TIR.
Jason's
And
always
once
he's
you come
always-
here, you've signed up to people look at you like, are you an ally, Ben Burgess? JG, are you an ally?
yeah.
You lose your
Jason-
ally card when you come on the
Jason Miles spends half his time looking at black people on the TV and seeing what kind of blood quantum they have.
I have
He's like, would they pass the brown paper bag test?
I have encountered this more than once in real life.
Like, he's
I
like,
do it to my own children.
he does it. He did. That's why do you think he gets all those light skinned people on the show? He's like, he gets Bert on. He gets who else? Who are the other
Teray.
like Teray?
Yeah.
Yeah, Jason likes to surround himself with light skinned people. I believe the
Sean
term is
McWhorter.
high yellow.
I'm going to name some movies from the 80s and change the subject a little bit. And tell me if you guys have seen these. And these are some classic movies from the 80s. Body Double comes out in 84.
Don't know-
I should say
don't
the
know
80s.
it.
This is
Palmer.
1984. The Neverending Story is 1984.
I was gonna say the Never-Ending Story was like a staple of my childhood.
Ben, Neverending
Nope.
Story.
Nope.
Really?
It was. I
There's
remember
scary
the-
elements to those movies too.
Yeah.
I remember the thing that they ride on is like a dog horse dragon.
yeah.
That's
horse
what
dragon thing. I
Gene
just thought
calls his
that was-
junk.
The thing they
Dog
ride on.
horse.
Are you ready for the dog horse dragon, ladies? Were you scared of the dog horse dragon, JG? Because I found that thing quite scary.
I mean there's a lot of things that are scary about Never-Ending
That
Story
movie
in
is
hindsight.
disturbing.
What about did the He-Man movie come out in 84
Nope,
or is that 86?
87. I'm gonna name movies that came out in 84. The Woman in Red.
Don't know.
I mean, if we're going to non-horror movies here,
16 Candles comes out in 84.
It was a pretty staple year for sex.
Footloose
comedies, too.
comes out in 84. Purple Rain comes out in 84.
Oh yeah, Purple Rain. That is the best.
Top Secret with Val Kilmer comes out in 84.
Wait, we can't just pass over Purple Rain. That's like the best musical of all time.
Best musical of all time. I said Purple Rain's a musical the other day. I don't know if it's classified as a musical. But fuck, Purple Rain is a musical.
It's a musical, and every single song in Purple Rain is a good song. There's no filler. No filler.
I agree. We did the 84 music show, and people filling in for me did not agree with that, and I will say it is.
Name one filler song. I mean, like Dove's Cry, classic. Darling Nikki.
Oh, one of my favorite songs off that record is Darling Nikki.
You know, Darling Nikki was the first song I obsessively listened to as a teenager. Just played it on a cassette over and over again because it's so good. Didn't even know what he was saying. Doing what with a magazine? And then that's how I got into. That's literally was my gateway song into Prince.
Another movie that comes out in 1984 that I feel very confident that no one on the screen has seen is The Brother from Another Planet.
John Sills wrote it.
He did. Have you seen it?
I have only seen the trailer for it.
I win again.
I like that. That there's a comment from 3 minutes ago that somebody said, "Jesus Christ, Ben, really?" And I have no idea.
What movie was that you didn't see? Bachelor Party comes out in 1984.
Hey, I feel slighted because I said earlier this was a staple year for sex comedies. It's Revenge of the Nerds came out in 84.
Revenge of the Nerds has such an indelible mark on the way I see the world. And that's why I'm so problematic.
Oh, Supergirl came out in 1984.
Supergirl came out in 84, yeah.
That's the one where she flies, where they go back in time by Superman flying around the Earth the other way. Is that the?
That's 4 or 3 or 4. That's one of the canon ones, I think, is where Superman goes and reverses time.
I have seen the Supergirl one, but yeah. So there was that one. Double Trouble.
Dude, all these movies that come out, you know what else comes out in 1984? Beat Street. Ben, have you seen Beat Street?
Nope.
That's fair. I'll give you that one. JG has this movie in my queue. I haven't seen it. Silent Madness.
It's not that great.
But is there boobs in it?
Yes.
Okay. I feel like the 80s is really where you double down on the amount of nudity that you put in a horror movie for no good reason.
That seems right.
I was going to say that when Ben was talking about the Friday the 13th movies and how they make no sense. And I'm like, as a kid, I was not watching it for the plots. I was watching it for the Tom Savini effects and the boobs.
But I was just watching / rewatching, depending on the movie, all these movies like this year. And in 2024, there actually are alternate means of seeing boobs.
I'll take your word for that. Oh, somebody pointed out in the chat, 1984 came out in 1984, and that was a very good 1984 adaptation with John Hurt as Winston, and the Eurythmics did the soundtrack for it. But the song that the Eurythmics made for the 1984 movie, which was called Sex Crime, was not really fitting with the 1984 ambience, and they swapped it out for a classical score. But the Eurythmics dropped a banger for the sex crime. You know, do you remember that song? Anybody remember that one?
No. No.
Theme song to my life.
Stop remembering it before you get a fucking.
Has anyone here seen the really underrated Carpenter movie that came out in 84, Starman?
Yes.
Jeff Bridges.
I went to the theater to see that because I thought Starman was going to be like Star Wars. And I begged to go to the theater to see Starman and sat in there like this the whole time. Like, I don't see any explosions.
Oof.
Spaceships.
Yeah.
This isn't Tron. Starman. I did not like. I need to watch Starman as an adult.
I
but
think you would like it much more.
child Jason that was expecting like Tron and Star Wars and all those things to like.
He's waiting for
and the
Bruce
last
Box.
Starfighter.
He wants Bruce Boxleitner to get like his Tron kit on and
Yes.
zoop
That's what
around.
I had a very similar experience when I watched like Wicker Man when I was 10 years old, the original. 'Cause I thought it was. I looked at the poster and I'm like, it's going to be Christopher Lee and some like giant wicker statue that attacks people like a kaiju monster, and it was
No.
definitely not that.
No.
Extremely
Although the
fucking good,
ending stuck with me.
extremely good movie though.
It is. No, it's great.
Yeah.
But has
And
Gene Bajlan seen Revenge of the Nerds? He got real quiet.
really
with
makes you appreciate.
I don't think I maybe I've seen Revenge of the Nerds. I don't know. I can't remember. I've definitely seen Weird Science, which I like that movie. That's
Revenge of the Nerds, Weird Science, very different films.
Yeah.
Very different films.
Yes.
You can watch Weird Science with Zal in the room. There's no nudity. They don't show anything of Kelly LeBrock other than her legs in that movie. You don't even see a butt shot. Revenge of the Nerds, you're gonna have to have way too many complex conversations.
I don't think I saw Revenge of the Nerds then. We had our own in Britain. We had our own tradition of kind of those franchise comedies, those types of comedies called carry-on movies, which was it's the basic storyline of every single carry-on movie is dirty old man pervs over young ladies' boobs, making weird innuendos, and it's pretty funny. The last one they did was Carry On Columbus, set in where they made a comedy out of Christopher Columbus's arrival in the Americas.
No, the stuff that you got in the 80s from the States when it came to like wacky teen comedies was Porky's. And once Porky's hit, it was like, oh, you guys just want to see like women doing regular stuff and dudes busting in on it. Okay, we're gonna give you that in spades. Here's Revenge of the Nerds.
I was gonna say there's one sex comedy from '84 that beats out Revenge of the Nerds for me, and maybe you've seen it, Jason.
Ski
It
School.
used to be on Showtime. Have you ever seen Hard Bodies?
Oh, yes. And I've seen
It's about just some bum surfer dude who literally gets paid by a bunch of older, like middle-aged men to teach them how to get laid over the summer. It's literally the plot.
like those movies were
Well, that's
so,
like 90% of the internet economy these days.
That's true.
which is funny because those movies they were just for cable. They were just for cable. If you had cable back in the day, you were watching. If you stayed up late enough, like if you stayed up to the end of whatever horror movie it was, like let's say Friday the 13th Part 3, one of the ones Ben hated, then you were gonna get Hard Bodies or Ski School or what's another one, JG?
Hot Dog the movie with David
Oh
McNaughton.
fuck,
I
Hot
don't-
Dog
I don't-
the movie. Yeah.
I don't hate it. I don't think it's a particularly good movie, but like if there was like some like random night when I was in Rosarito where you're like, hey Ben, you want to get pizza and watch Friday the 13th Part 3, I'd be saying, yeah, of course. Right? Like,
I just now have an image of Ben and Jason spooning on the couch, watching Friday the 13th, and I think Jason would be the big spoon. Although
I'm the
maybe
big spoon. No,
no, I think Ben would be the big spoon. What, right, Ben? You'd be the big
he's
spoon.
got big hands.
yeah, I mean, come on.
He's got big hands. Look at those hands. Look at those hands.
Hey, Gene, we were talking earlier about there was going to be a Friday the 13th movie after the 6th one, and I want your opinion on this. It was pitched. Cheech and Chong meet Jason. What is your opinion? That should have happened.
I'd watch that. I mean, I see a lot of Cheech and Chong these days. They're all over Twitter. I think like
Oh my God, yeah, the edibles, like the chews or whatever.
Cheech and
Like
Chong branded edibles. I mean, I have to say, if anyone's gonna cash in on the branding edibles, Cheech and Chong. So Friday the 13th, Cheech. The problem that I have with horror movies is that I don't find them scary, and unless they're ridiculous, I don't find them funny. I think you have to be in a particular mindset to appreciate a horror movie. But I just found these American horror movies, and I don't think it was just me. I think a lot of people in England, at least, just found them not that scary. They were just kind of what's horror? They just never found. I never found them particularly horrifying.
Listen to that. I don't know if you remember on the subject of stoner comedies from Cheech and Chong, Harold and Kumar Escape from Guantanamo Bay. There's that scene when they're in Guantanamo Bay and they're the actual Al Qaeda guys who are like taunting them about America, and they get really mad. And if you want to, say, oh, you need donuts, and like, hey, fuck you, man, donuts are awesome. And it's like that's kind of the speed of patriotism that Gene's comments just now inspire in me.
That's fair enough. I suppose,
you,
for a nation of cowards, horror movies works, right?
I'm really wow.
Yeah. So
I mean, they don't make him where he's from. That's what he's trying to act like they don't make him there.
Yeah.
Look, if you had to live in Britain, horror movies,
you would get arrested. That's how serious they were. You were getting arrested. They were called video Nazis, and you were getting arrested. So calm down there, tough British guy. You were arresting people that had.
You know who makes scary?
Like
you know who makes scary horror movies? Japanese people.
No, Americans. I'm sorry.
Japanese people.
American.
Have you ever seen Legend of the Overfiend? I'm going to recommend that you go get yourself a video cassette of Orochi Doko's Legend of the Overfiend, and then come back to me and tell me how traumatized you feel. And imagine 10, 11-year-old Gene accidentally watching that because his dad recorded something incorrectly off the TV.
Was this a traumatic experience? This why like you have to come up with
nothing. It ruined me for horror movies. Once you've seen there was supposed to be
we've actually got it down to the real motivation.
It was supposed to be a Japanese.
We got through all. They're like, oh, I don't find them that scary. I don't really think they're funny either. And then it's like finally we're getting down to Gene's on the couch right now. We're getting down to the original trauma that like scarred him and made him made up these excuses.
Look, like my dad was supposed to record something off the TV for me, and instead what I got was Legend of the Overfiend and Tetsuo, the Man of Iron, right? Have you ever seen that one, Jason? Yeah. So imagine an 11-year-old seeing that and then wondering, like, are horror?
Okay, that explains a lot. I was gonna say, because when you said that you couldn't get Nightmare on Elm Street, I was thinking to myself, did Gene just pop out of his like mom as like an adult? Like, I'm not. That's a relatable movie. As a teenager, that movie I could relate to it because the whole movie, Nightmare on Elm Street, is literally a movie about teenagers having to go through all this crap where their parents don't listen to them. That's why I love it. It's not even that it's scary. I could just relate to the characters.
That's fair enough. No, I think I just saw Tetsuo, the Man of Iron, and Legend of the Overfiend, and then after that, like. Nothing's going to touch you after that.
I just saw the there's like a really low budget ripoff of Tetsuo Iron Man called Meatball Machine.
Oh god, that sounds even
seen
worse.
That? Yeah, it is. It
sounds
I made my brother watch it, and he was like, "What is this?" And I can never get these images out of my head.
I think I owned Tetsuo. Another movie that comes out in '84 we haven't talked about, Tenebrae. Am I saying it right?
Tenebrae.
Is it
Tenebrae did not come out in?
Yeah, I believe it's '84.
It came out in I want to say '82.
Well, there's only one way to find this out.
'82. I just looked it up.
Okay, well you win. I lost.
I mean, it's sad that I knew the exact year of every Argento movie.
What's really sad is because JG is born in like '95.
Were you born in '95, JG?
I was born in '91.
Oh, sorry. Pop.
I look older because I smoke.
He's the same age as my brother, my youngest brother.
I have to admit, I haven't regularly smoked in like several years, but I have it's like as we're having this conversation, and I keep forgetting we're not in the same place. I really want one of those cigarettes. But I'm smoking so much as we've been talking.
Ben's going like, please give me a smoke.
Hey Ben, you want to know something funny? If you started smoking on screen, your listener base skyrockets.
Yeah,
I believe in my soul. If you start smoking on screen with the tweed jacket, the game is changed. And you have a bottle, and you're pouring something in the bottle. Game over. Ben Burgess, biggest left podcaster known to man.
All right, well. We'll
try it out. If I'm right, Just take me to breakfast at the place down the street from my house that I love.
Fair
That's all
enough.
I ask.
Fair enough.
After you fucking blow up.
Oh my God, Jason Mars, you really are the small spoon, aren't you?
So there's something I was wondering, which is what makes Nightmare on Elm Street a departure from the traditional slasher films? Wes Craven has one of the most uneven directing careers in this decade. Why does he hit with this one and not say Deadly Friend a few years later?
That's a good question that I wrote. My personal opinion is this is one of those moments is if you watch Nightmare on Elm Street, it does feel like those made-for-TV movies that he's done. He's stuck in those made-for-TV fonts. He's stuck in a lot of those made-for-TV shots. And I think what saves him is this concept is so practical effect heavy that it just works. And maybe it's the cast. I think he just happened to, and you know, he didn't do it, the casting director in him, but that cast of people, the young Johnny Depp, Heather Langenkamp, Tina. What's Tina's real name? You know her name, JG.
Oh, Amanda Weiss.
Amanda Weiss. All that works so well together. The dad. What's the dad?
John Saxon.
John
Saxon and Ronnie Blakely the alcoholic mother in it. They were both actually like very seasoned actors. And I actually think they're very good in the movie.
And Robert Englund as Freddy Krueger, who's really trying to own that role. Maybe even does a little too much. Maybe he overacts a little bit. Excuse me. But it works so well. He can't do it again until Scream. There's something about Wes Craven where he needs a little camp in his films. And even that original Freddy.
I disagree with you. I love a lot of the stuff he comes out with after Elm Street and
Shocker.
I love Shocker.
I love the soundtrack to Shocker.
Dude, Shocker has a
love
cameo
Shocker.
by Timothy Leary, who plays like a televangelist. I love that movie.
Shocker could have had a cameo by me, and I would have been like,
Well,
Serpent in the
Shocker-
Rainbow. What about Serpent in the Rainbow?
hated it.
I can understand. Yeah,
I was
I've had this
thinking about the
discussion
fact
with,
that like I was trying to decide whether to admit that I like Serpent in the Rainbow more than you're supposed to on TIR, but I do.
The Haitian contingent of this show will lynch me. I just want you to know that.
Yeah, fair enough. But also, come on, New Nightmare is before Scream.
New Nightmare. Also,
Okay.
People Under the Stairs.
People Under the Stairs is great.
Okay.
I mean, look,
If you really want to go through Wes Craven's catalog from just 84 to People Under the Stairs, and then you're gonna see like, ooh, that wasn't that good. People Under the Stairs is cool. If they remade it, it would be like The Hills
Harry
Have
Potter.
Eyes.
Now,
The only
Like,
thing I think
I will-
about People Under the Stairs, if it got remade, I'll
People
say
Under
this
the
and
Stairs is one of the funniest FUs to the Reagan era.
I
It's
agree.
amazing.
I agree. But it does
because
have
the evil couple in it is literally supposed to be like a stand
Nancy
for
and
Ronald and
Ronald
Nancy
Reagan,
Reagan.
yeah.
And they're into BDSM and they kidnap children. I mean, that's
No.
basically-
People Under the Stairs is great, but it has that. I can understand why if you showed that movie to a younger person, they wouldn't dig it because it's just so bright and it's got that almost made for TV shine to it that a lot of his movies have. And the ones that it really works for him, it worked. Nightmare, because it had to be done at night, it just worked. And then Scream works because a lot of stuff does happen in the day.
Yeah, right. I think that's right. I think that I mean, look, I think New Nightmare is very, very good. I think it's like
I left New Nightmare, but New Nightmare is great.
I think it's like probably the second best Nightmare on Elm Street movie. I love Dream Warriors, but like but I think that gives it real competition and like but you know, but also like I mean undeniably you know, the first Nightmare and Scream that he's like, you know, I've said just now that I like several of those other movies, but it's like, yeah, look, that there is a reason that those are the two big classics, right? You know, that like those are times where Wes Craven is actually kind of remaking the genre a little bit, like that Nightmare on Elm Street is obviously a huge influence on later horror movies, and you know, Scream I think really helped set the agenda for like horror in the 90s. I mean, I would say maybe going back to the original, the original question that I just came up with, a minute ago on my own, that one way that it's Nightmare as a departure on other slasher movies is that it's not out in the, like there's so many of those movies that are like out in the middle of the woods or at camp or something like that. So the fact that it's not that is significant. And even like Halloween, yeah, it's in the suburbs, but it's like, I think that that you're still sort of parachuting in Michael Myers from, I know he comes from there originally, but from the institution that he's escaped from. Whereas I think there is something that's like a little bit different about the setup in Nightmare on Elm Street that makes it sort of very comfortable in a way that helps with the creepiness and the sort of combination of things. And there's that kind of, and there's that kind of sleek, I don't know. I mean, it's like, yeah, there's that sort of dreamy atmosphere. The fact that like what JG was saying earlier, that like just there are a lot of things just kind of about being a teenager that resonate, with that movie. I think that one
not
really
being listened to by adults, not being
what's
taken
really
seriously
weird?
by adults.
That was who originally showed interest in that movie, and people are always shocked when I tell them this. But if you think about the time period, it makes sense. Disney wanted to make that movie, and they wanted to cut out the gore. Yeah, but think about it. This is around the time that Disney is doing its dark Disney type stuff, like Watcher in the Woods. And then they did a dark fantasy movie in the 80s too that I can't forget, Dragon Slayer, I think, or something. But they did a lot of darker movies back in the 80s, and they initially wanted to pick up Nightmare on Elm Street, but they wanted the gore taken out. So that they looked at the script and were.
I mean, they do. What's the hooker one? That she meets Richard Gere.
Right. Pretty Woman.
Pretty Woman, thank you.
I
couldn't think of the name of it because we've been talking about all these 80s like trash.
Not even in JG's top 10 hooker movies.
What, they're alive? If it's not Frankenhooker, you don't even give a damn.
Damn, Frankenhooker.
I remember watching Frankenhooker thinking, dude, super crap.
How did we get on? When was Pretty Woman released? How did we get on Pretty Woman?
Disney.
Pretty Woman has to have been released after 1988 because they referenced the song Kiss, which was released in 1988 as part of the Prince's second not so good movie, Under the Cherry Moon.
The Cherry Moon was not good.
It's kind of weird.
Yeah.
It's a weird movie. It's like the Star Wars prequels. They were like, oh yeah, Purple Rain was good. Okay, Prince, do whatever you want. And they were like, maybe don't do whatever you want, Prince. Because why are you dressed up as a 1920s Frenchman? And how much pomade have you purchased for this movie? There was a lot of pomade. And why are you shooting it in black and white? There were some good scenes in it. There were some funny scenes in it. It's basically a Prince movie where he gets to mac on white women, which I think is a lot of Prince movies.
No.
No, he doesn't. Wait, is his girlfriend black in Purple Rain? Yes, she is.
Or Latin.
Some kind of Spanish.
She's ethnically ambiguous. He was in the ethnically ambiguous film.
She was so hot. She was maybe Italian or some kind of Spanish.
Yeah, I remember that.
She was just so goddamn hot.
There's definitely some. What does he say? There's definitely some Asian in there. That's like, yeah, there's something at the end of that. Monologue.
I like my women like I like my rugs.
Oriental
Oriental and ready to be walked all over.
Jesus Christ.
Bat dance.
Pretty Woman is surely some kind of like milestone in sex worker positivity. Like it's
sanitized. That's what I have Ken Russell's same view on that movie. The Pretty Woman. I just didn't like that it's basically a fairy tale.
Yeah.
Which I get why there's some people that like that, but I'm like, when I first watched it, I was just like, I mean, I bartended for a while, so I knew.
So you know what it's like
of the night. you know, and it's
JG
not
knows a
like that.
whore when he sees her.
That's what he's trying to
I didn't say that.
That's what I meant to say. That's the nicest way to try to say that. Look, I know hookers.
I'm JG. I know hookers when I
I'm
see them.
JG Michael. I've bartended in some strip clubs, so I know what goes on in the champagne room.
I stepped into this one.
You did.
Look, I might know a lot, but I know her when I see one.
It is how to identify a hooker on sites.
Don't trust them. They'll steal your Magic the Gathering cards.
JG has just one less kidney because of knowing hookers.
I mean, it's actually kind of a
pro-home.
perverse. It's a kind of perverse movie, really, if you think about it. It's like when you say, Jason, when you think about Pretty Woman, it's very sanitized. It's like when rappers talk about, yeah, I'm a pimp. It's like, and you were like, what if I said, yeah, I'm a sex trafficker? Because that's what you're doing.
Yep.
So I think, maybe people like the fairy tale aspect of it. There's some good acting, but there is a kind of very sinister underpinning to it all, which is this kind of like, a highly exploitative sex work and the sanitization of what that sex work can be. And there's a lot of there are movies and films that do that sometimes.
The original script was written long before, and the original script was written to be a story about these women that were their town had gotten destroyed due to deindustrialization and corporate takeovers. So Richard Gere's character in the original script is kind of a horrible man, and the writer was writing this script, was working on it at these all-night donut shops in LA. And he would meet these young girls that were coming from the Midwest. And when he would talk to them, he found that most of them, if not all of them, left these dead towns where industry died due to, takeovers in whatever factory or whatever. So the original story was, I think, called like $3,000, because the thing that these women would really tell them, like, what was good about our job is when we meet these rich business guys, they take us to Vegas for the weekend and we make like $3,000. So that's what it's really supposed to be about. The original woman is supposed to smoke crack and do hard drugs, as the women that he was meeting were doing that. So he was able to write in her friend, who's kind of an avatar for her, who she's really supposed to be. But even they write out of the movie where the friend's doing coke at the party, they won't even show her doing drugs. Julia Roberts just comes in, sees the drugs on the table. I think she might even knock him over. I don't remember the exact scene, but there's a lot in that movie that is just been changed. And so they were having a problem with the ending, and they asked the original writer to come back and write the ending. And he says the original ending is, they fight. Even in the end of the real movie, there's a fight. So he says when he wrote that fight, Richard Gere throws the money at her, and as it's falling on the ground, people are walking all over the place picking it up. And the whole thing was and they wrote this out of the script, that she actually has a kid, and the reason why she wanted the money was to take the kid to Disneyland. So after the money's flying and people are picking it up, the next scene is supposed to be kind of this sad face Julia Roberts and a smiling kid on a bus coming from Disneyland, and that's how the movie was supposed to end. And
damn,
we can't do that.
I want to recommend a movie.
That sounds like a better movie,
right?
It does.
I want to recommend a movie real quick, since we're talking about Pretty Woman. Ken Russell, who did movies like Tommy with The Who, and then
Lair of the White Worm
is one of my favorite ones. He was so infuriated when he saw Pretty Woman. He thought it was a very sanitized vision. He thought it didn't deal with class at all. So he made his own movie in response to it with Teresa Russell, and it's just called Whore. And
that movie was a rough watch.
It's a rough watch, but it's a very class conscious movie, and I think it's a better movie. I really do think it's a better movie. I think it's it's a much more thoughtful movie, and I wish more people saw it.
Wouldn't be hard.
Well, watch Horror, you will be all the way.
The movie that literally they couldn't put the name of it on the theaters You know, so the tagline was if you can't say it, see it.
It's a lot of fourth wall breaking with Rebecca De Mornay.
Or no, Teresa Russell.
Teresa Russell, sorry. You know, you guys gotta look the same.
Bill Cody says that's when Ken was living in
Oh, does Bill have some Ken Russell stories? I'm sure Bill will send me a message later. And then that time, Teresa Russell
I'm like surprised that you've seen this, Jason. This movie.
It came on Cinemax one night.
Yeah.
I was old enough to get an erection, and it was called Whore.
So how old were you? Like 5?
Wow. Wow.
No, I'm just asking.
Hello, my name is Gene Bajlon. I'll be kicking below the belt. I got a fat foot. Make sure to take that testicle right off. No, I was probably 12 or 13 when it came on, and I watched it thinking it was going to be something else, like all these other movies that JG is referencing, like Hard Bodies, and where it's just like just giggling women and boobs. It was not. It was real fucking disturbing. It was unsettling.
I mean, because that's how most sex work is.
You probably didn't pick up on it at the time, but if you rewatch it, what's most interesting about that movie is Teresa Russell, who is the title character. You know, at the end of the movie, it's the people around her that help her are all in different ways marginalized. They're like the people that tries to help her at one point is like a lesbian who's like disowned by her middle class family, and then there's Antonio Fargas as a homeless black man, and you know there is this like the underclass versus the exploitation artists in that movie, and I think it's a very class conscious movie. It's really interesting.
Maybe we should make. Well, no, I don't think that's a movie night.
I'm not sure that's what we want to do.
You know, I fucked up one day and we watched a movie called Life is Hot in Cracktown. And I thought it was just going to be filled with like stupid.
Buddy Giovanizio.
Oh, fuck that guy. That guy's a turd.
He also did a movie called Combat Shock, which is probably the most depressing, depraved Vietnam vet movie ever made.
Have you seen Life is Hot in Cracktown?
Yes.
That is the dumbest movie I've ever seen about poverty. Why were the kids dirty and they had a bathroom?
Right.
Take a bath, kids. There's a tub right there. There's a tub in the house. You can take a bath. Why are you walking around with dirt smudged faces? That's not how poverty works.
Didn't that come out like after Harmony Korine did his little poverty porn shtick with Gummo?
Yeah, it came out like 2009. The movie starts off with this young Latin girl, like, walking through the fucking project.
This is why I don't watch movies. This is why remember that movie Kids?
Yeah.
Also, Harmony Korine wrote that.
Yeah. Kids is also one of those movies like no kids at this point.
I remember Kids.
Actually, no, I think that Kids are like that.
It was a bit much. It's always a bit much.
They did. Yeah. I mean, it's a bit. I mean, that's why I don't watch movies unless it's got flying.
I don't. I think that to one extent or another like that, but I think that I think it's like such a one-dimensional version of it. Like this is like it's just nothing but like tut porn, right? Like that they have it just exists to like overstimulate you're like tut-tutting. It's a stupid. I watched it once, not that long, maybe after it came out. I don't remember exactly, and I just actively hated the experience of watching it.
I mean,
I appreciate Kids on some level, but when it comes to Korine and Larry Clark, the ones I like are the ones no one talks about. Like, I liked Spring Breakers a lot. Harmony Korine's Spring Breakers, but my favorite Larry Clark movie is probably Marfa Girl, which is like a very sweet movie for a Larry Clark film. But
Marfa, like the city
Martha
in Texas?
Girl. Yeah.
Oh, Martha. Oh.
No, Marfa. Like
Marfa,
it is
like
about the city in Texas.
Okay.
Yeah. It's
Beautiful
about
city.
immigrants and dealing with like this
the gentrifying
policeman who has it's police brutality and immigrant families. Yeah.
I've never seen, I'm gonna bite my tongue a little bit here. I've never seen a US city by a border where people would want to gentrify it like you see Marfa. where it's like kind of, I don't want to say a resort, but it's like a go-to spot for people from both coasts because it's such a small, it's a really small town. Interesting place. A lot of hipster coffee shops there. You'd be surprised. They had a really cool music venue there that I had a blast at playing years ago. But let's move on a little bit from shitty movies of the now. Do you guys think the straight to video market influenced Hollywood? I wish I had the
Probably.
Jeopardy
Just
music.
thinking about
I wish
that.
I had the Jeopardy music.
I mean, it's certainly influenced the straight to video market.
I mean, it's changed quite a lot. I don't know how it used to work in the United States, but really there used to be a very long delay between movies coming out on a video and then coming out on TV. Remember, it'd be like a 4-year. Dude, you can't just put me up on the darkness. I'm scaring people. But it used to be.
I like it.
It used to be a very long process. Was that the same in America?
Yeah.
Because I think as it sped up, I think that must have had an impact on movie making. Because then I'm assuming if you were dropping your VHS or your DVD a lot closer to the time that the movie was in the cinemas, you'd be recouping your money faster. So I'm assuming there would have been some impact on how movies were made and how movies were marketed and how movies could be repackaged. I remember, like, because you'd have movies that would go straight to video then. Like, that didn't exist before, did it? Like, you had,
no, because once you have video, this is my take on it. What video does is Hollywood is not, they're still saying, look, you want to buy these newer films, it's going to cost you an arm and a leg. So video stores would have, if you guys remember back before Blockbuster, video stores might have 3 or 4 copies of a newer release that had just left theaters. And to Gene's point, they stayed in theaters a lot longer. You know, movies like Star Wars, all the blockbusters, those stayed in theaters sometimes for years. And if you think about a movie like Alien, even, I don't even know what year it comes to television or even cable, but it's definitely not 82. Same thing with Star Wars. I don't think that comes to television till almost the time Jedi is ready to come out. So there is a massive lag, and mainly because Hollywood is still saying, much like we always see when there's a new technology, you're going to hurt the box office. So the one thing you can get to fill your store is this cheap straight to video or stuff that didn't last very long in the theater stuff.
Movies like Coneheads, which I remember picking up from Blockbuster Video because it was a straight to, I think it was supposed to be a movie in the cinema.
It had a theatrical release. Coneheads had a theatrical release.
I don't think it had a theatrical release in the UK.
Oh, maybe not.
Because I only discovered like 4 years ago that Coneheads were a character from Saturday Night Live, which has like no relevance in Britain. But yeah, it's like, so nobody cares about Saturday Night Live in Britain. But yeah.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. This era is short-lived because what Blockbuster
Guess they'd have
does.
to have laughter, but yeah.
But you know what Blockbuster does is they go, well, we're going to have more new releases in our stores. So if you remember, when you first went to a Blockbuster, that new release wall was massive, and whatever was, man, they have 35 copies of Terminator 2. Oh shit, we're gonna watch it tonight. You know what I mean? That's what Blockbuster was able to do. It wasn't able to give you the sheer amount of crap cinema that you could get from the mom and pop video stores.
Yeah,
but you were gonna get so much newer movies.
I mean, yeah, this is what I mean. I said this to you last night that I realized that this is like, it's ridiculous that I feel nostalgic even for Blockbuster, because like at that point, that's just the fumes of the thing that you should actually feel nostalgic for, you know, which is the like local video stores that actually had like, you know, you just like walk up and down the horror section and like just see like all of this like myriad insanity that, you know, that's like, I'm just gonna like grab some movie that I've never heard of until just now, but it looks like it might be fun.
Somebody asked me in the chat, Gene, did you ever watch Brass Eye? Not only did I never only watch Brass Eye, I actually, one of the only DVDs collections I keep includes Brass Eye. In fact, it travels with me wherever I go. In fact, it's in the room with me right now.
Damn. Is Brass Eye in the room with you now,
Right.
Gene Boswell?
Brass Eye is in the room with me right now because it's amazing.
There's a comment here that someone says, I'm sorry, I can't read your name. Blockbuster killed mom and pop. Netflix killed Blockbuster. Circle of life. The killing of mom and pop to Blockbuster to streaming. What did that do for the way we look at film? Because one of the things that renting a video does, and I know we can all agree on this, is there's no algorithm.
Yeah, you have to go in there and you have to.
Let
me tell you about a wonderful place that still exists, though. It's called the public library. And if you go to the public library, you can get DVDs. So if you want that experience, I
mean,
if you want,
generally not nearly as many, but yes, that they do have those at the public library, so that's still a good thing to do. I really like that little PSA about the library just emerged from a screen of complete darkness. Real disconnect between form and content there. But yeah, I mean, I always mention this essay I really like from a little over a year ago on Freddy DeBoer's Substack with, if nothing else, the best title ever for something like this. It's called It's So Sad When Old People Romanticize Their Heydays. Also, the 90s were objectively the best time to be alive. And, I think, I don't think he even talks about video stores in there. He just talks about, I think his examples about like record stores, but it's like largely the same point, right? I mean, that there's you have a really different relationship to movies when it's not like just, oh yeah, any movie that's ever been made. The only question is like whether that streaming service is one I have or whatever, but like pretty much every movie that ever been made, you can watch any night that you feel like it. And you might like, it's like whatever, if you get distracted 15 minutes in, fuck it, watch it tomorrow, watch it next month, right? Whereas as opposed to if like, yeah, that's like your evening is organized around that. You go out to the store, you look around, you browse, as you say, there's no algorithm so you're discovering things in a different way. And then once you've brought it up to the counter, right, like you're committed to watching that movie in a way that
treasure hunt.
I've resisted the idea. I've resisted the idea that the 90s are objectively the best time because obviously there's that nostalgia aspect of it. But when I think about it, the best time for me personally was the 2000s. But I think objectively speaking, there was something about a sweet spot in at least a kind of consumer culture where you have a mass consumer culture. But there is still opportunities for people to meet in quote unquote meet space. Mm-hmm. So, so much social activity around malls and around retail as well. It may be regarded as problematic in certain ways, but did get people into like having just being close to other people, forming communities and, being, less socially isolated. It does seem today that, a lot of those spaces don't exist to the same degree that they did in the past. A lot of the pastimes that people took up their time, which in the 90s and 2000s were seen as a waste of time, are now being themselves undermined by like things like Instagram, TikTok, and things like that. So for one of the interesting trends, for example, people are arguing in video games is that, the amount of time kids are playing video games is declining, but that's not because they're all going outside to be, together. It's because they're all just TikToking with each other. And, you see, I guess the video game consoles are good.
Is that what they're calling it? TikToking with each other?
Yeah, TikToking with each other.
Or they're watching videos of streamers playing video games.
Of watching streamers playing video games. I mean, to think about this, in the 90s, even playing video games a lot of the time, you still had your, 6-day Civilization 1 epics back in those days. But like a lot of video games, and with the rise of the video game console, you'd have your friends over because you'd want to play 2-player. Yeah. You'd be like,
somebody would go outside when you were done.
Yeah, you'd go outside when you're done. You'd hammer Streets of Rage 3. If you had one of those 4-people controllers for Mario Kart, people would go nuts for that. And then you'd go outside. When we were teenagers, we'd go out and try and buy alcohol. I had a beard, so I used to get sent in to get the alcohol. But they would all get mad at me because I'd spend everybody's money on Bailey's because that was the one that would go down the easiest. But you could, but you actually went out in the world and did stuff, right? But it does seem that it's not that kids today are doing fundamentally different. And again, people disagree. My colleagues totally disagreed with me when I said this at a departmental function. Like if you take a kid raised in the 90s now and you sent them back 30 to 40 years, the world would be completely incomprehensible to them. Whereas if you sent someone from the 90s forward to today, that world would be different but comprehensible because many of the key beats of our consumer society are recycled and updated from the 1990s.
I was gonna start the whole monologue off by talking about Back to the Future. And if you think about the intro to Back to the Future, you see this hill valley that's kind of dying. It's a shitty kind of suburb. And Marty McFly goes back to almost a magical 50s time. Everything's working, everything's cool, but it still has its own problems. You know, his whole mission is to save middle-class security, and he ends up kind of bumping his parents' status up. And there's been memes. I'm sure, Ben, you've seen them. Gene, I know you've seen them because we're all at an age where we're seeing these memes that says, if Back to the Future happened today, Marty McFly would go back to 1994. 1994 doesn't feel that much different other than some technological advances, right? Even fashion-wise, I don't think it would seem like such a different world to me.
Yeah, I mean, and if you like my grandmother, right, who's still alive, she didn't see a fucking banana until 1956. I mean, we had rationing in the UK, right?
Gotcha.
We had like you didn't have like a mass consumer. Now, obviously in America, that mass consumer culture started earlier, but really, I think another thing about the 90s as well is the social attitudes are also more recognizable today, right? Like when I was at school, it was like officially frowned upon, you know, like don't bully people for being gay. It's okay to be gay. It's okay to be different, things like that, right? You know, and then I speak to people who went to school like a decade before me, and in those days, the gym teacher would be calling you a bunch of poofters. You know what I mean? So social attitudes were also in the process of radically changing. But I do feel like, yeah, the jump from 1990, let's say back to 1960, would be a bigger jump, culturally speaking, because all our frames of reference today seem to be largely derived. Like, what's the biggest, you know, all these big consumer marquee items that come out there, they're all like popularized in the 90s. And even in the 90s, those were more niche things. Like when people talk today, say I'm a fan of Batman, I'm a fan of Spider-Man, they're not talking about like, oh, I was a kid in the 1950s going down to the street vendor to get my cartoons of the Spider-Man and the Batman, the world's greatest detective. They're talking about the recycled 90s cartoons, right?
Yeah,
that's even true with a lot of the popularity of 80s movies amongst, you know, millennials that were born in the 90s like me, because we grew up watching the 80s movies when they came on TV, like Predator.
90s movies looked like 80s movies. 90s movies were just 80s movies with different clothes.
Yeah.
I have one last question I want to ask you guys, and I want to thank everybody for hanging out with me today. Thank you guys so much, and thank you guys all for watching. I know usually on Tuesday we have a more serious show here on TIR, but I did want to kind of lighten the mood, but still ask, you know, kind of fun questions with this.
Well, last week you wanted to ask us about what is genocide, so I think
I did.
Yeah.
I did. I'm all over the place, Baji, Gene, Ben, and JG, and I'll get off the screen because I really want to hear you guys talk about this amongst yourselves. But I really feel like there's a difference between, and Gene is hitting on this with what he's talking about with the 90s. We all, and JG talks about this today, that he has a collection of VHSs and DVDs. Things are different your relationship to stuff is different when you actually have to physically buy it, to physically go get it, right? We all, even JG, physically had to go to a store.
Bro, can I just jump in right there?
Yeah.
I'm not joking about this. I am still upset. I've bought all the albums again, but I'm still upset with that girl I hooked up with who said she was going to be my girlfriend, made me come over to her house, made me pleasure her all night long, and then she stole my 1970s Queen collection and never came back. Like my first edition remastered Queen albums, she buggered off with them. And it's just not. I have all those albums still. I even have them physically, but it's just not the same.
Gene could be a serial killer. This could be his origin story. And we'd all be like, yeah, okay.
That's fair. We get it. But do you guys think there's a difference though with even the way people interact politically? Because you don't have to physically buy into shit.
Dude, 100%. It's like fashion, right? Now, like when you went out in the 90s to buy some clothes, that FUBU t-shirt was pretty expensive, right? You saved up your pocket money, but fashion now is so cheap you could dispose of it. And I assume that there's analogies in that with every other aspect of pop culture. It's become more and more disposable. Even as you talk about all the time, Jason, with your political ideologies, you can be a Leninist Calhounist one week and a MAGA communist trot the second. Everything is always in the, there we go. MAGA. There's our flag, the TIR flag. Jason, that should be the TIR flag. Anyway, but I'll finish up on this point. It seems that popular culture being propelled by the capitalist churn is both stagnated in terms of reference, but also paradoxically just is more and more disposable and rapidly changing. That would be my take. You guys take it away.
Yeah, that sounds right.
There we go. I got the Ben Burgess seal of.
No, I think you've hit the nail on the head with that. I don't think there's any like dominant culture anymore, really. So it's a very strange moment we live in. I also just think the way we interact with media is different. Most people I know are always on like Discord, even when they're watching a movie, and I can't do it. When I'm watching a movie, I'm just like, no, I have to sit and watch the movie and my full attention is on the movie, not on my phone or anything. But most people are not like that. So I think our whole way of interacting.
Second screen viewing, dude. It's a thing, and I don't dig it. And I have a house guest, and we've been watching crazy movies, and we've been watching the movie. We haven't been kind of dicking off. We've been like watching movies, and it's been rather fun to sit around with someone and just not, look at the alert and watch a film. I do want to ask these. Ben reminded me that I thought I came up with some decent questions. In what ways did the resurgence of slasher films reflect or respond to societal fears and anxieties of the time? We're speaking the mid 80s. Ben Burgess.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be curious to hear from JJ, but I do think that I do wonder how much that's what was going on there, and I'm sure there is some of that, right? That like you're worried about what the kids are up to with the sex and the drugs and whatnot, and what could happen. But I also wonder if the opposite's true, that like you can only really enjoy like a good fun horror movie about something if you're not actually all that worried about it. Like I don't know. I mean, I think about like a not very good movie, right? That I saw in 2011 called Contagion, that was about the spread of a pandemic and people socially isolating because of the pandemic and all that stuff. And you could like watch that movie and enjoy it in 2011. I would definitely not enjoy that movie if I saw it now, because it's too real for me. And so like I wonder how much like actually some of the appeal of these movies comes from the opposite, right? That you're not actually all that anxious about this shit, that like you can that you can enjoy that fun sort of like ride at the fair feel of like making yourself intentionally scared about something because you're not actually scared about it.
JG?
I think there's a lot to that. I think a lot of horror movies would play into like social conservatism, but in this like wink wink nod way where we're sort of like, yeah, but this is just cover because we want to be able to show you some boobs and some blood. Like, I mean, that's definitely what
Even
was
the
going on
conservatives
before,
like
yeah.
sex and violence, right?
Right,
Yeah,
right.
but,
Well,
but,
that's
but it's
yeah.
also sort of like very like on the face about the hypocrisy. It's like it's not even hypocrisy almost because they're like there's no attempt whatsoever to hide it. You know, it's like it's
I
like
know Jason will disagree with me about this, but that's how I feel about like old 80s combat TV talk shows. Although I do think they had a bad effect, but something like Wally George or the more well-known Morton Downey Jr. is so in your face about being trash that it almost cancels out being like something you can take seriously. Although I've met people that for some ungodly reason, there's
People
that
took
Morton
those
Downey Jr.
guys
is
really
very-
seriously because I think they looked at them as like these almost countercultural
Yeah.
figures that weren't conservative. And it
There
go
was
back
even-
and watch Morton Downey Jr. and look at the audience and look at how excited these.
No,
young
you're
people
right.
are.
Yeah.
They're not young Republicans.
Right.
They're if anything, they're apolitical.
Right.
But they love seeing somebody yell at someone else that they deem powerful. And you know who else gets looked at as like Avengers for the working class? The fucking Guardian Angels.
Who?
yeah.
There was a guy that got shot on the subway, Curtis Sliwa. And New York was it might have been the most violent city in America at the time. And he got together a vigilante gang of people that would perform citizens arrests, on the subway and in some of the streets and some of the more violent parts of New York. And he's a big time law and order dude to this day. He ran for mayor a few times in New York. When Bernard Goetz, the subway shooter, shot 3 young black men that did not attack him. Sleeve was one of the big defenders of Bernard Goetz.
Well, that sounds not like a nice guy.
And he was beloved with a large multiracial faction of people behind him. So
Yeah, it's a similar thing with things like the Michael Winner, Death Wish movies. I'm horrified when I find that there's people that take, that seriously.
those movies are the racism in those movies is just oh.
Can we at least agree? There is one thing we can agree about Morton Downey Jr. Well, 2. Yeah, it's awesome when he gets punched in the face by Danny Glover in Predator 2. And, he has one of the best
Or
episodes.
when he dies in Tales from the Crypt, when he dies playing
Tales
kind
from
of
the
himself.
Crypt is amazing. That's one of my favorite episodes. The TV terror episode where he literally basically plays himself and is a complete jerk, and he ends up getting murdered by ghosts.
I think he's a complicated character. I think he's this guy that's a bit of a fail son that figures out what hits. And, because he's a lifelong Democrat. He grew up with the Kennedys.
Yeah.
And here he is, shitting on both parties. And he did something that the people that Ben debates do all the time. I'm not a leftist. I'm not a conservative. It's like, what the fuck are you? I'm a truth teller. Morton Downey did that better than Tim Pool.
I'm the
and his
secret
shitty
third
being
thing.
What'd you say?
Yeah,
See,
the secret third thing.
Well, what's the
secret
thing?
third thing.
I think we live in a cynical age. I think people in the 80s and even into the 90s could like trick themselves into believing that there was some kind of social value to that kind of TV show, that there was some quality to it, that it was novel, right? If you remember back when they first started Big Brother in Britain, they had Big Brother in America, I think, right? Like right. When they first started Big Brother in Britain, it was not portrayed as like, it's Big Brother. Are they gonna like jerk off at each other, or what's gonna happen? No, it was portrayed. We're doing this very serious social experiment to see how these people will interact with each other over time, and that's what's happened to trash TV, right? You know, at the first there was like a pretense of that. There was some kind of like meaningful value to this, and by the end of it, everybody's kind of got wise to the fact like, oh, I'm actually just here because it's like a circus. It's like the Colosseum, and I want to see somebody find out that he's not the real baby daddy, and I want to see someone get slapped, right?
Yes.
And I would say, Ben, I don't know if you agree with me. That's kind of what's happened to the political debatosphere online, right?
Yep.
At some point, the people took it like, okay, we're going to do the marketplace of ideas. The internet gives us the opportunity to it. And now we're at the point where I am a mongoloid. I am that. I am. You know?
Yeah. No, there's definitely
That's where we're at.
There's definitely some truth to that. I think there's like a lot of. I mean, I think as with anything like this, it's like I would just say it's like since there is like a ridiculous profusion happening right now, there is a big range, right? You know, that's like definitely the bottom end of the range is, you know, like Haas like yelling at people while people do the, you know,
hey,
whatever
he is
whatever the digital equivalent is of the like Jerry Springer, you know, whoop whoop whoop, right? So that's like the bottom end of the quality range.
Bottom end, that's like high quality entertainment.
Well, yeah. I mean, if you're a moron and like that's what you want, right? That's like, you know. But like,
haters gonna hate, but that's funny. That when he called that guy a mongoloid, that was really when.
No, he was called a mongoloid. Yeah.
And then that was some rap, that was some hip hop level switcheroo on him. I am a mongoloid.
Yeah. I mean, it's like, yeah, sure.
But
like, you know, but like,
no.
yeah, there's a big range, right? Like, I think just because there is more, you know, like, look, if you have a year where there are more slasher movies come out, that some of them are going to be better than others, you know, some of them are going to have artistic merit, and some of them are,
but like,
you know,
for example,
if you're at a time when there are a million debates going on, then like there's going to be, you know, there's going to be that, and there's
why is Ryan Grimm and the Polish young lady who does the Breaking Point show, why are they having like a serious Palestinian journalist debate with Destiny, right?
Right. Well, it's like even, you know,
that's not Ryan Grimm, right? That's the Lex Friedman.
No,
Destiny was debating Ryan Grimm too.
Yeah,
on the
he
Hill.
did. He did.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I saw it.
Isn't
I
there
saw it, and it was disgusting.
I was told a while back, this is maybe like 2 or 3 years ago now, but I know there were a bunch of streamers doing debates where they would debate over like a title, like the Hippy Dippy Championship, I think they called it. Like it was almost like leaning into the pro wrestling element of like.
No, I remember that very well. Yeah, like that's. No, I mean, again, that 100%, you know, 100% that exists, right? Like, yeah. And it makes me really sad that it exists, like all of that stuff, right? Because
it's the entropy. I see this. That's what happened. I think that's like a really good example of what happened with so-called trash TV. It went from having like people engaging with it in good faith. And now I think people don't engage in it good faith, right? It's not so much about even the people involved. More so it's about the audience.
Although, yeah, to some extent, although like I also think like my general rule whenever I hear people make generalizations about debates is like just substitute out a different medium for political expression and see like if you could run the same line. Right. So like podcasts, I'm not saying
like
you could say that like podcasts have become like the Jimmy Dore show or something, right? That's what like left-wing podcasts have become. And it's like, yeah, but like I don't know, TIR also exists, right? Like I mean there's a range.
That's not quite what I'm saying, and I'm not talking about all debate with a small d, just like, you know, debate with a capital D. But what I'm more talking about is about how audiences over time engaged with a particular format of media like the trash TV, where I think it's easy from hindsight to say today that there is like there's like it was like a trash TV from the beginning, but I don't think that's how it necessarily was engaged with by people over time. But I think that kind of TV developed an audience which over time became more and more cynical about what was being engaged in that in that type of TV. So by the time you get to Jerry Springer, I mean, he'll do a Nazi show every so often, right? But most of the time it's just baby daddy drama and personal insults. So you kind of see that shift, because if you go back to the modern Downey Jr., and I think even earlier with Jerry Springer, or even in Britain with our equivalent, we used to have Trisha, and then we had Jeremy Kyle. And by the time he got to Jeremy Kyle, he was just doing poverty porn, where he was just showing like, look at these bucktooth, like scumbag people, and he'd yell at them for about getting their lives on track, right? And then the audience would just egg it on, and it was like it went down a kind of degenerative cycle. But I think when so-called trash TV begins in the 1980s and even into the early 90s, there is a pretense to that there is some value to this, like shows like Ricky Lake,
Oprah, the End of Donahue.
This is
Geraldo.
And it's become a parody of itself, right?
Well, because they were taking on these issues that weren't necessarily the big as issues as they wanted to present them as, like racism, right? They were always like, this guy's a neo-Nazi. This is a black nationalist.
I mean, I think the disanalogy to me would just be that there was like it's not like there was like some good version of those shows that like had always existed or continued to exist at the same time or whatever, right? Like it actually like really was always just that thing, right? Whereas I think in this case, it's more like saying like, oh, podcasts, have a trajectory or were this thing or whatever. It's like, well, podcast is a medium, right? I mean, you can do anything with a podcast, right? Like, so that, that's my pushback on that. But since Jerry, I mean, again, I think it's a very useful thing to do because I think we live in an incredibly segmented media landscape, and it's like the one chance you get to talk to somebody else's audience, right? That's it. That's the whole thing. But
I'm not criticizing you, Ben, at all. I'm not even trying to on the DL criticize you for doing debate. I think there is like some utility to it. And what I'm more saying is like, I think audiences have become cynical, right? Mm-hmm. I think that's it's less so much. I mean, you're right with the shows. Like obviously, talk shows were perhaps always trash, and they just became more trash over time.
Yeah,
and obviously that's what. But what I'm saying is more about how audience have received these things. In that, like, audience has become, like you say, Ben, more fragmented, and also like just really cynical, right? There's like
there's definitely a core audience of people who are like addicts for this stuff, and like what they what they're into has gotten more and more ridiculous. I think that's absolutely true.
I think and daytime TV now is just like, I mean,
television isn't what it used to be because kind of going back to this whole idea of video and cable, where you can watch what you want when you want, which is video. And it's really what you want, right? Because you bought these movies, you rented these movies. That gets ramped up on a whole nother level now, because I don't even know what daytime television is, because I haven't had television in the last 3 years. Listen to me sounding like a Zoomer. Yeah. Only you old people watch TV. No, it's of poverty. It's just because of poverty.
I mean, but when you say that, I mean, what you like, I mean, it's not like you don't have a television, like you just
I just don't want. I don't have the cable.
Yeah. Which honestly, I don't understand why anybody does have cable anymore.
Can you have cable anymore like you could back in the, I don't even know if it exists like it did back then. Even here, it's just packages for the internet.
Yeah.
I think that's what it is now. I think that shit's over.
It's been that for a long time, really. I mean, like in markets where they brought cable in later, like in Turkey where they didn't have table. They just skipped straight to something called Digiturk, which you got with your internet, right? You know, it's been going that direction a long way.
And what sucks is these movies we're talking about, I wasn't seeking these out.
That's the problem now. People
Go ahead.
People. Well, it's with everything. The algorithm's taken over.
Yeah.
It's taken over in that it's making the decisions for us. I see it all over society in different ways. Like, for example, students who come to be advised for their education. A lot of them just go like, "What do I need to take?" Right? Tell me what to take. With the TV, it's like, you know, you have this kind of like algorithm feeding you TV, making it very convenient for you, and you know, people get with dating as well. You know, like everything has to be mediated through an application or an algorithm, and I just can't imagine that has necessarily positive effects on human psychology or the way we interact things, or even and frankly probably blinkers the way that we look at the world, whether it's the media choices we look at, whether it's because, you know, in this particular day and age, even media consumption, like what kind of movies you like, are they problematic, suddenly becomes a political issue,
Right.
as well. So
Oof.
it's like, if you
I
like,
mean, we said some cancelable shit about the 80s. Like that's I think that's why the 80s gets looked at as such a taboo era, especially this one, because those movies that JG is talking about are all movies that cannot exist today.
Yeah.
You know, which is
Yeah,
why there's a certain segment of the internet that glorifies these movies maybe too much. But anyway, I want to say this.
Yeah, I
this
mean,
is
we'll
the last question.
we'll see.
Sorry.
You know, we'll see if it makes it into the final draft. But the currently the opening sentence of the book I'm writing with Bhaskar and Mike Beggs is, "We live in an era where everything is political and none of it matters."
Oof.
it's true.
Oof.
I used to think, well, I think that's how most people think about their media consumption now, but I've tended to move in the opposite direction personally.
Same. Yeah.
Because I do not see watching a movie from the 80s as political.
Yeah. Well. I mean, I think I'm the same. Like I used to like much more often kind of have political takes on movies or whatever, and I don't know if it's just like my reaction to all the stuff that we were just talking about that like it makes me go in the other direction, but I just like don't like really at all anymore. Like, I mean, I guess maybe if it's like the movie itself is like super political, but like, you know, apart from that, no. And I don't, yeah.
One thing I wanted to get into before you wrap up here, Jason, is since we were talking initially about 80s horror and how that was dominated by, you know, the slasher movie, something I find really interesting is a lot of people will say that like the slasher movie dies out in the later half of the 80s and especially in the early 90s. Whereas I think there's more of a continuity, because even in like the early 80s, you start getting these movies like Vice Squad or the Stallone movie Nighthawks, which is an interesting movie because it's featured.
One of my favorite Stallone movies.
It's featured. I learned about that movie from a 1984 documentary about horror movies called Terror in the Isles. And it's one of the featured movies that they reference throughout the whole documentary. And there is like a horror element to it. And there's also, so what I'm getting at is in the 80s, even in the early 80s with movies like Vice Squad, you have like almost slasher villain-esque characters ending up even in action movies. So like Silent Rage, which is basically Chuck Norris versus Michael Myers.
Yeah.
And then, you know, movies like Angel from 1984.
Yes.
That has a sort of slasher-esque element. And then you move into like the later portion of the 80s. There's movies like Kat Shia's Strip to Kill and her 1991 movie with Christina Applegate, Streets, which both deal with like the seamy underbelly, but there's a slasher killer in both those movies. And then Kat Shia ends up doing Poison Ivy. I think there's I think the slasher movies became, you know, thrillers in the late 80s. And
if we started to show off
thrillers in the 90s.
Look, to your point, if we start to show off asking the question, are these horror movies new Westerns?
Yeah.
Are these thrillers just different kinds of horror movies.
Yeah.
When horror becomes a bad word in the 90s,
Yeah.
you just can't make these movies anymore and think you're going to get a return on investment.
Well, a
Especially
lot of
because I just want to say this before you chime in. Blockbuster at a certain point, and someone we interviewed, JG Brian Yesna, says this.
Yeah.
In Searching for Darkness, he goes, "There's a certain point where Blockbuster is reading scripts to see how much shelf space you're going to get. So if you know Blockbuster isn't going to hold your film, and they're buying everything, you have to meet what Blockbuster wants." And I don't think there's any coincidence that all of a sudden, when horror starts to go the way of the dodo, everything is an erotic thriller that's bloody as hell.
No, that's what I was gonna say. Is like a lot of, even if you look at the late Roger Corman now's output in the early '90s, a lot of the movies that came out, he did that movie Strip to Kill. He produced that for Cat Shea, and he also produced Streets. Both of those have slasher elements. Final Judgment, another one he did, has a lot of slasher elements, even though it's sort of categorized as an erotic thriller. So I think the slasher movie has just evolved over time. One of the weird things for me about slasher movies is I feel like they've never truly died. We're talking about slasher movies right now. Yeah. I just watched a filmmaker friend of mine, Jay Burleson. He just did 2 slasher movies. The Third Saturday in October, Part 5.
Yes.
And then the Third Saturday in October. You're supposed to watch Part 5 first and then the other one, because it's supposed to mirror the experience of when you would go to the video store. Mm-hmm. You may only be able to get Part 5, and then you would have to go backwards.
And then yeah.
This movie was kind of popular with, the horror movie crowd. I mean, I guess you can say it's the underground horror movie crowd, but a lot of people read websites like Bloody Disgusting now, so they find out about it. And in a way, what has surprised me is the fact that there's still slasher movies that are very indebted to the 70s and 80s coming out today. And people always seem to want more slasher movies, especially in the horror community.
One of the best horror movies I've seen in 20 years is Late Night with the Devil.
Oh my God.
That's an homage to the past. That's an homage to the 70s and 80s.
That's really actually one of the issues I have with horror today is I think we're almost too stagnant with it. We always want the throwback.
But what happens in a moment where you can't really get your idea greenlit unless it sounds like something that's happened before, even on the arty side? You kind of have a whole generation of people that are afraid to think originally because there's damning effects to thinking originally.
Well, if we can't have original movies, that actually makes me think of another question I just thought of, which is we're 40 years from Nightmare on Elm Street. Outside of another Wes Craven film, Scream, it looks like the horror franchisable character is done. Do you think it can return?
No. I think the franchisable horror character died with too many people
talking about Terrifier.
Stop.
No, that's gonna be when that first Terrifier movie came out, I remember every kid in college, when I went back to college, was talking about it. I was like, oh my God, this is like when I was a kid and we were hyped up about the new Scream movie.
JG's not telling you, he also went to Special Effects University. So he didn't go to school for special effects.
I went to film school, but I also went to a private Catholic college. And it was weird because all these Catholic kids are talking about it, or kids at a Catholic college.
Terrifier is surprising to me. I'll be honest with you, JG, that you brought that up. It's surprising to me because I tried to watch it, didn't dig it.
I don't like the first movie that much. I like the second one.
I was like, this is like there's movies that have had sequels, but they're not sequels in the same sense of there's a main character that's going to get franchised and he's going to be a doll.
Yeah.
And he's going to be something you sell. Like the Human Centipede had 3 movies, and I think only the main guy comes back in the third. He's not in the second.
I mean, I will say we're only 2 years away from the last Halloween movie, right? That was Halloween Ends was 2022.
Yeah.
Granted, the last one I really liked was H2O, but but yeah, I mean, I think that, like, I don't know. It really makes me sad if we can't have franchisable horror anymore, which we might not be able to. I mean, I was thinking when I first saw the question of I'm sure I pulled that off seamlessly, but that was actually a question Jason wrote. That when I first saw the question, what I was thinking was actually like, oh, could you like go back to Nightmare on Elm Street, which sadly I don't think you could, because
The only reason we don't have a Nightmare on Elm Street is because it's tied up with the Craven estate.
well, but
I-
like
yeah.
why hasn't the Craven estate, like, I mean, like they've been taking, like they were looking at
Yeah.
scripts on and off for like forever, right? I mean, like why haven't they pulled the trigger on it? And I think that, like, I guess I'm not sure about their motivations, but I mean, to my mind, the main reason it wouldn't work is just that Robert Englund's too old, and I think we proved in 2010 that like trying to substitute him, like a different actor is like really hard, which like itself makes that franchise much harder to resurrect. Because like, look, Michael Myers can be played by any random stuntman; it doesn't matter.
Right.
Jason
Right.
Voorhees as well.
I'll say
Yeah,
this. I mean,
yeah.
with that may be the case with Nightmare on Elm Street, but with Friday the 13th, it's simply a matter of a rights war between Victor Miller, who wrote the original, and Sean Cunningham, who directed the original and then took the franchise from there. So
Yeah,
a lot of it is just
I mean,
rights issues.
Sure. I mean, Jason could definitely be played by a random stuntman, right? Like that doesn't matter. I mean, I guess it's been, and yeah, even Freddy versus Jason was.
It's almost 20 years old. That was like 2006, was it? 2004. 2004, Freddy vs. Jason?
No,
Yeah.
it was later than that. It was like 2009, maybe.
No, it was early 2000s.
Yeah, it's 2004, dude.
Oh no, you're right. Sorry.
I remember that
2003.
soundtrack had all those metalcore bands on
Yeah.
it.
2003, you're right. Yep, you're totally right.
2003, there you go. There you go.
I do
Yeah.
think there's a future for franchisable horror, but it's not going to be a money-making enterprise. What I mean by that is, in the past few years, we've started to have a slew of these. They're called fan films, and they technically are, but there's these movies coming out like the Never Hike Alone movies, Friday the 13th Vengeance, and then another one called Dylan's New Nightmare, which is a sequel to Wes Craven's New Nightmare that
about the kid.
literally stars Miko Hughes.
Oh, no
from the
shit. It's
original.
a fan film.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
about
dope.
39 minutes long
Dope.
with the original actor. And they're trying to make sequels, and they're trying to bring Heather Langenkamp in. They want to get Robert Englund to play himself, maybe. I don't know if they'll actually achieve all of this, but I mean, the Never Hike Alone movies have achieved a great deal. And the two
Shocking.
Friday the 13th Vengeance movies. There's even there's actually a Black Christmas fan sequel called It's Me, Billy. And they had Olivia Usi set to be in it, but she couldn't be in the part 2 of it for scheduling reasons.
Oh, okay.
But
Interesting.
there's all these, like, I don't even know what to call them. They're like professionally made fan films now that are, I consider a movie like Never Hike Alone canon. You can watch it on YouTube. But no, I'm not joking. They don't. When I say fan film, people think, oh, that's like a cheap. But
No, these are
professionally
super high
made.
production quality. Yeah.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that's where a lot of things are going when it comes to these, like the
Well, you
fans.
can say the same thing about fan fiction, right? I think companies like A24 figured it out. People are label conscious. They're brand conscious. They're so brand conscious, and they think they're so not brand conscious that they want our brand. And we don't need a franchise character. We are A24. A24 is like Apple of sedity horror movies. So I think the branding of your studio is bigger than a bankable character, because
That's sort of like what has happened with Blumhouse too.
Yeah.
Although I really can't stand a lot of Blumhouse stuff.
But it's the same thing. It's the same thing. You think you're so anti, but you're so pro this brand.
Right.
I only watch A24 movies.
Yeah.
No, I've met
mean-
people like that.
I mean, I guess I can think of at least one Blumhouse movie that has, well, not counting the Halloween movies that did, that has a sequel, which is Happy Death Day, although that really shouldn't have, because
Unnecessary.
so
You know what
unnecessary.
kills me about Blumhouse? Their best stuff is the stuff no one watches. Like
Yeah.
Freaky was really, really fun with Vince
Okay.
Vaughn, and then he did another one.
Gotta
it's like a-
disagree there.
You didn't like it?
I liked Freaky.
Okay, I really wanted to like Freaky. I mean the like just the setup, like the sort of like 3 sentence description of the movie made me think I was gonna fucking love it. Like that sounds like exactly the kind of thing I'm there for. And then I watched it. It was like this is really bad. It's
I mean,
I don't.
admittedly, I was really, really drunk when I watched it, but I enjoyed
Okay,
it.
that would definitely help. Like I liked some of the stuff at the beginning, but no, it was like I don't know. It just like later on, watch it again while you're sober. Like some of the stuff later on, like felt to me like it was written by a committee.
It might be made to watch fucked up. I literally write music thinking I want someone to listen to this when they're fucked up.
The other one I was going to mention that Blumhouse did was, if you guys heard of this movie they did a few years ago for, I think it was originally for Showtime or whatever Showtime has become on streaming, called it's called Torn Hearts. It's a throwback to the Psycho Biddy movies, which were movies with like older actresses that go crazy. So like Whatever Happened to Baby Jane.
Okay.
But it's this movie Torn Hearts is Katie Sagal
Mhm.
as an elderly country music star that has 2 young upstart country music stars come to her house to get advice, and she goes crazy on them. And it's amazing just to watch Katie Sagal in a horror movie.
All right.
So I would
I'll have to
recommend
check
that
out.
one.
Look, I'm trying to make a list of certain movies to go back and watch, because even before this episode, there was so much stuff I wanted to watch. And I can't remember who was talking about Dune in the chat, but I did kind of want to go back and watch the original Dune, just because I remember the intro to that movie is like 15 minutes long, and I wanted to see if I was right on that. That Virginia Madsen trying to explain to you what's going on, because it's so complex. So I kind of want to go back and watch Dune for that one reason. And it's been fun trying to find these lesser known. Again, we watched this movie last night called Disconnected, and it was on Tubi. If you know anything about Tubi, they just keep playing movies. So we watched it, and kind of, one of us fell asleep, and then another movie just popped on that was equally as low budget, but it was just shot a little later on film and not video, and just really shiny. I can't remember the name of it. And then we watched that. We kind of got invested in that, but it's probably 1 a.m. at that time. And then another one came on, like, dude, there's all these movies. Got to go back and find this movie we watched, because it's kind of interesting. We'll see how it ends.
There's so much weird stuff that comes out on Tubi, even stuff that's newer. Like I just watched that Spider-1, the guy from Power Man 5000.
Okay. Yeah.
Rob Zombie's brother or whatever.
Brother,
Yeah.
a stepbrother.
He made a movie called Bury the Bride. It's like a hillbilly horror vampire movie. And I was like really impressed by it. It came out last year. Like it's obviously, shot in a few days and kind of low budget, but it doesn't look it. But the weird stuff like that will come out on Tubi, like newer stuff that I wouldn't have, known about before.
There's a movie on Tubi. It's called The Downfall of P. Diddy. And we were like,
Oh my
how
God.
did you make this? It's going on currently.
Yeah. I really started to realize lately how much I enjoy watching things on streaming services that have ads, because I actually think that's like I actually kind of like having
That reminds you of being human.
it.
Look, Mom, I am a real boy.
I mean, I don't know if this is just some weird nostalgia thing, or some of it's just appreciating, okay, I have a second to get up and do whatever. And I'm not gonna fucking pause the movie, but if it's already paused, but I don't know. I'm sure a lot of it's just nostalgia. It's like, oh yeah, this is like watching movies on TV back when.
Well, Bill Cody says it's the #2 streaming platform. It's free.
Yeah.
And they have so many movies that I want to see, like all the Charles Bronson canon films. You want to watch Kinjite Forbidden Subjects? It's there. You can watch Charles Bronson open a movie by sodomizing a man with a dildo, and then going home like nothing happened.
Do you want that?
Yep.
Okay.
You should see me. You should have seen me watching it as an adult and yelling in my house by myself. How did he just do that? No one said anything. He goes home to his wife. He's like, it's a weird day at work today. She's like, oh, I'm sure everything will be fine. You just, and they never go back to it that he, violated someone that wasn't the nicest guy, but still the overreach of law enforcement and its acceptance in those films.
Wait until you see 10 to Midnight.
Oh, I've seen 10 to Midnight several times. I paid for a copy of it on Amazon. How are you going to be a smart serial killer? But I guess this is before DNA. So he kills people butt ass naked, Ben. He takes all his clothes off, but the man has the hairiest balls ever. He's sprinkling ball hair like Hansel and Gretel are leaving crumbs all over the goddamn crime scene. This man, but he's like, we can't seem to find him. What is he doing? Just
Charles
ignoring-
Bronson is a straight up fascist in that movie.
Charles Bronson plants evidence on this dude, and he's made to be the good guy. You have to see 10 to Midnight. Ola Ray is in it, and there's boobs. Ola Ray is the black girl from the Thriller video.
Oh yeah.
So there you go. But if you want to see a man run up and down LA streets and just you hear the flapping sound of his fucking
Not especially.
his bing bong just fucking you just feel like running for his life from the cops.
Sure.
It's and then at the very end he's like when the guy gets caught with the faked evidence, with the planted evidence, his lawyer tells him, just say you're crazy and that you won't go get the death penalty. And at the very end of the movie, because the guy didn't get arrested, all this bullshit happens and he starts screaming about how crazy he is, and they have to arrest him. And he has to go to a mental hospital, and Charles Bronson has some cool one-liner and then shoots him. And I'm spoiling the ending because the movie's like 40 years old. If you haven't seen it now, and it's 40 years old, let it go. I will spoil the ending on anything over a year old. You had enough time.
I remember years ago before the great Gatsby movie came out, seeing this like at Salon or Slate or one of those places is like whatever it was, like 10 years ago. I had there was Jay McInerney had this essay about why like movie adaptations, The Great Gatsby are never good, and it's burned in my head forever because I saw somebody in the comments get mad at him because he spoiled the ending.
Gatsby. It's almost 100 years old.
It's like
that was mandatory reading for me in high school.
Yeah.
That's almost as bad as I was in a bar once bartending, and a friend came over, this lady friend of mine, and she said they were talking about the O.J. Simpson American Crime Story, and I'm introducing this friend of mine to people, and she says, "Don't spoil the ending of American Crime Story, O.J. Simpson, for me." And I was, oh my god! Everyone just looked at her, and I'm like, ugh.
Again, I hate this idea like, oh, don't spoil it for me. It's like, look, dude, everything is spoiled for you. There was a time, and JG does not remember this time. If he says he does, he is a liar. There was a time where if someone taped the game for me, don't tell me how it ended. And you could go all the way home. You could work a whole day and not know who won the game. So you could do that. You cannot do that in 2024. You know the ending of everything. Someone's going to tell you. Social media is going to tell you. Something's going to tell you what the ending is. Stop. Stop with the spoilers, people. Let it go. Let it go.
Yeah,
See, I still get riled up over spoilers. I wanted to see that new. What's her name?
I think there's a happy medium. Like you can, just say like, look, sure. I mean, you don't have to go like, I don't know, like what's the thing like when they, I remember some story from like way the fuck back when the Harry Potter books were still coming out and they were doing like the midnight, releases or whatever. And there's like some guy who like went to one of those, was like shouting the ending, right? It's like, you don't have to do that, right? But like at a certain point, when people are like exactly obsessed with like avoiding spoilers for fucking anything, no matter when it came out, right? No matter what the context is, it's like, it's incredibly annoying. It's kind of infantilizing. It makes it impossible to like have a real conversation about stories, because like, how are you going to do that if you don't talk about what happens at the end of the story?
Oh, don't tell me what happens. You're not gonna. Are you really gonna go fucking see Death Wish 3? Like, tell me you're gonna go see Death Wish 3. Go fuck yourself. You're not gonna go see it.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what you want me to tell you about it, because now you don't have to see it. There's a whole world of the internet filled with people that go, hey, you want to act like you saw something, but you really didn't? I can tell you about it in 20 minutes. So the ending of Death Wish 3, the bad guy dies with a bazooka. In Death Wish 4, the bad guy dies with a bazooka. There you go. What do you know about Death Wish 1?
I only get mad when it's newer movies that get spoiled for me. Someone spoiled Immaculate for me recently with that.
I thought you were going to say someone spoiled Barbie for you.
Who's the chick in Immaculate? Everyone loved, all the guys are into her because she has big hooters. She was just on SNL. I'm blanking on her
Jennifer
name.
Tilly? She's
no, she's like younger. She was in that. I'm blanking on her name.
I don't know. I don't know any young women. All young actresses look exactly the same to me. From 2006 on, I don't know them.
Sydney Sweeney, and someone spoiled the ending for it.
I'm so mad Bill Cody knows this name. Look at Bill. How the fuck do you know these young actresses, Cody?
If someone had spoiled Late Night with the Devil for me, I probably would not have been as into that movie. I'm so glad I went into that blind.
Yeah, that's fair.
All I watched was the trailer, and I thought that was enough. I was like, oh, this looks really good.
Yeah. I was like, wait, there's a subplot about Bohemian Grove? What is this?
Yeah, dude, can we just say that they fucking nailed that horror movie? I haven't seen Barbarian. I heard Barbarian's really good.
Barbarian is very good. You should check it out.
I want to see it. And you know what? You can tell me the ending of a movie, and I can still dig it.
Yeah, it depends on the movie,
That's
but
true.
yeah.
You can tell me the end of Memento, I wouldn't be like, oh, no way. I'd still have to like watch it to get it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Maybe that's just me. Maybe I just don't give a shit.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's like I might give slightly more of a shit, but not really that much. Like, I mean, I've definitely seen many movies that I already knew the ending twist of, and I still liked. I mean, I got first time I ever before I watched Fight Club for real, I was over at like I don't even remember. I was like over at a friend's house, and they were like just finishing watching it. So like I watched like the last 5 minutes of Fight Club before I ever watched it. I still love that movie.
Yeah, someone said, what about Sixth Sense? And I was like, yeah, someone told me.
Yeah.
Someone told me before I watched it, and I watched it. I was like, oh, wow, it's a really good movie.
Yeah.
I could still enjoy it. You could still enjoy the movie. And it still can be equally as like, oh, what a twist.
Yeah.
Right? I think so.
Yeah.
But
that's fair.
I'm not going to speak for
more
everybody.
about the journey than is the ending.
Yeah.
Right?
And if it's not, that's usually a bad sign. Like if it's really like you're not going to enjoy it because you knew how it's going to end up, then it's like, really, how much was there in that movie to enjoy? Which is like does definitely happen sometimes. I mean, I when I finally watched Soylent Green, I was like, yeah, come on, say the line.
Right? You like there's certain things that you've heard about for so many years, and you're like, okay, I'm going to watch it now. And that's cool. Like, again, Ben and I watch this guy, Brandon Tennell, talk about films. And sometimes I'll go back and check out these movies that he's talked about. They're old. It's okay. But, I don't know. That's just me. I also only speak for me. But just know if you watch this channel, I'm telling you the end.
Fair.
That's just what it is. And if you guys want to tell me the end, I don't care because I know most of you are lying anyway. So I'm going to watch it to see if you were telling the truth or not. But thank you, JG and Ben, and definitely thank you, Jean Bajlan, for crashing our party for a short time. This was a fun conversation. I didn't know I was going to talk to you guys this long, but I'd much rather talk about movies. I wish we had a bigger channel where we could actually show clips of some of these movies that we've been talking about, because, man, to really understand why I love some of these movies, you have to see the magic, to me, of practical effects of the 80s. And you have it in spades in 84 with movies like Terminator. Ghostbusters has some great effects. I still love Gremlins.
Oh my God, yeah.
But the arms in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1 with Freddy, the Tina scene in Nancy's Dream in Nightmare on Elm Street Part 1, the very ending of the final chapter where Corey Feldman kills Jason because apparently he's a reflection of Jason when he shaves his head.
Yeah.
Which it made me feel safe as a kid, Ben, because I was actually scared by that movie, and I was like, oh, and I had hair at the time when I watched it. So I was like, oh, all I have
Also,
to do
the
is shave
Crispin
my
Glover
head.
death.
Crispin Glover in that movie doing that dance. So, I wish we could show you some of these things. Like, again, Christmas Evil. Watching Fiona Apple's dad lose his shit for an entire film. That's a great film. So thank you guys. Ben, what do you have on tap on Give Them an Argument coming up?
Give them an argument. We have on let's see, today's Tuesday, so day after tomorrow we've got the debate breakdown, which for probably slightly hypocritically, because part of the reason that we're watching it is I think it'd be an interesting clusterfuck. Doesn't really fit with all the stuff I said earlier, but yeah. So Matthew Whalen's coming on. We're going to watch the Dennis Prager and Batya Ungar Sargon arguing with Jenk and Dave Smith about Palestine, and then on Monday we're going to have Daniel Tutt on the show to talk about Mark Fisher's Exiting the Vampire's Castle.
Oh, interesting.
Yep.
Brother Michael. GG Michael Myers.
So, yeah, my podcast has become endless Israel-Palestine coverage because that's an issue that I'm very familiar with since my teens. Right now, I could really use Patreon support because I may have lost my one main advertiser since he's not going offline, but he's changing to a mailing list system. And I don't know if he's going to re-up with me on his advertising. So patreon.com/parallaxviews. I should have a few things coming up outside of the Israel-Palestine stuff really soon. So there's that. Other than that, I'm up for talking movies anytime you want.
Yeah, nice.
We got to do a whole Troma special, by the way, at some point.
Ooh,
because I was going to recommend. I just wanted to recommend everyone should see the new Troma movie, Eating Miss Campbell. It's one of the strangest movies I've seen, and it looks like a real movie. It's not done by Lloyd this time. It's done by an Australian director who's probably going to take over for Lloyd at some point. I feel like he's the next generation of Troma, and for the life of me, I can't remember his name right now, but it's a really good Troma movie, Eating Miss Campbell, and I would highly recommend people check it out if they enjoy these movies that we were talking about.
And I owe you a contact, JG, to that point. I just remembered that I never did that, so I failed you as a human. So I apologize, and I'll get you that. Thank you guys for watching. I will be back tomorrow with C. Derek Varn, who's going to be taking over for Pascal Robert in the Mau Mau Hour, where we will open up the phone lines, and you guys can yell at Derek Varn all you want. He's going to rant, and the phone lines are going to be open, and you guys can disagree. And I'm going to be trying my hardest to instigate online drama by calling you guys unsavory names. So get ready for a good one tomorrow. And on that note, we are out.